I'm out of sorts. Because that is today's thumbnail. Good afternoon, everyone. And, of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. I hope you guys are having a lovely day. Hope you had a wonderful holiday. Nice weekend with the fam. So good to see you out there. New Case, Barine, Jane, Renee, Kat, M337, Debbie Roush, Singing Pretty, Cat Girl, Trump 1, everybody in every chat. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. And I see we got a couple of folks over there on YouTube as well. If you guys are watching on some platform, do me a favor. Please hit that like button or the thumbs up or the red pill, whatever it might be. I would sincerely appreciate it. Sherry, I got to say hi to Sherry. She's always the first person in the chat over on Rumble every single day. Fran Boy says, my wife is home. That's great to hear. I mean, I hope that's great to hear. Hope that's not a cautionary tale you're trying to tell us. Anyways, we've got a lot to talk about today. Many updates from over the weekend. Also, the next chapter in the Seditious Six CIA Psyop has begun to play out. As they said in their initial video, they didn't want people to follow illegal orders. Well, now illegal orders has morphed into war crimes. And there's nothing worse you can be than a war criminal. The Nazis, Slobodan Milosevic, Mengele, war criminals are the worst, aren't they? Anyways, that's not President Trump. It's all a ruse, part of the color revolution scheme they are plotting. So do me a favor, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn because we're going to get right into everything right now. All right. Oh, she's been in the Philippines for a month. I didn't realize that, Freya. I guess I must have missed you saying that in the chat. Anyways, I hope she's having a good time in the Philippines. Lisa and I actually watched a very interesting documentary about the Philippines this weekend. So it's Manila Bay. Manila Bay is rising because of the use of groundwater on the island. There has been so much groundwater that has been pumped out over the last 50, 60 years or so that the land in Manila Bay has begun to submerge. And so what once were all of these rice fields are now mud crab farms. So they have like these canals. They're almost like dirt canals that go in between these large pools that are full of the salty, briny water from the ocean. And the water comes in, and because they can no longer grow rice there, they decided, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to harvest crabs. We're going to farm crabs. And like Manila in the Philippines is like one of the biggest places in the world where you can get like the best crab in the world. I've never had this particular type of crab, but I was seeing that they have millions and millions of crabs that come out of this area every single year. And it's very intelligent. Such a great idea because it's a much better crop than rice. You can make a lot more money off of crabs. And they have like this cool attitude about the whole thing because like different people own different pools. It was different plots of land. When it was rice, people would come in and they would farm the rice and then they would sell the rice. Now they've just got them filled up with crabs. They harvest enough crabs so that they can eat and they can sell them. And then they leave enough crabs so that there's always crabs there. And they also grow tilapia in the pools. So they will catch tilapia in nets. They'll just chop the tilapia up and then throw it back into the pool and the crabs eat that. Everything that the crabs need is provided in those pools. And it's basically like foolproof. Now, here's the cool part. So there is like a public canal next to all of these mud crab lagoons. And of course, the crabs, they don't know one lagoon from the next. Like they can climb out over the dirt canal in between them and the next pool. And if they do, they go into the next pool and maybe they breed with some of the other crabs over there and maybe they find some new territory and maybe they come back, maybe they don't. They might also just climb into the public water canal. And if they do, if you're a person who's just like in the canal and you catch a crab, hey man, that's cool. That's your crab. They have so many freaking crabs, and people are doing so good farming these crabs. Like, nobody's worried. Nobody cares about whether or not a crab is going to leave your pond and go into my pond or whatever, because everybody is living and surviving. It is the coolest thing in the world. Anyways, I've never been to the Philippines, always wanted to go to the Philippines, and this was just such a neat little view into the lives of the people from there. All right, you guys, we have so much to do today, so let us just begin. First of all, I wanted to bring you an announcement as to the health of Andrew Wolf. Now, I had this long post that his mother had posted yesterday at some point early in the morning, but it's kind of been superseded by the announcement that Andrew has begun to wake up and he has begun to respond to stimuli. So here, we're going to listen to this announcement in West Virginia. Take a listen.
Is that Andrew remains in serious condition. We did have some positive news that we were told that Andrew was asked if he could hear the nurse who asked the question to give a thumbs up, and he did respond. And we were told that he also wiggled his toes. So we take that as a positive sign. I'm not here to speculate, but I will say one thing, that Melody, the mom, has been so positive a force, and she's been asking people across the country to pray for her son, and those prayers are working. So say is that Andrew remains.
All right, so great news. Obviously, Andrew is not out of the woods yet, but the fact that he was shot in the head with a .357 Magnum, and he is already responding, it is very, very good news. Continue to pray for Andrew. Continue to pray for Sarah's family. That's what they need right now. It sounds like they have everything else that they need taken care of. The National Guard is taking care of them. I'm sure the administration is doing what they can for them as well. The Commonwealth of West Virginia, they are also doing whatever they can. We also had quite the bombshell that should probably surprise no one here. However, the bombshell is that an official FDA memo was revealed admitting for the very first time from an official government source that vaccines for COVID-19 were linked directly to the deaths of children. Now, if you've been following this, as I think all of us have for the last several years, we've heard tales from time to time of people coming forward, people who were involved in trials, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, there's all the anecdotal evidence. But perhaps the most shocking aspect of this admission is that the memo was obtained by the New York Times, and it was the New York Times highlighting not only the dangers of myocarditis, but also the deaths of children directly attributed to a variety of these vaccines. The author of this memo from the FDA was Dr. Vinay Prasad. He is the FDA's chief medical and scientific officer, and he's been a vocal critic of mandates and the overreaching government power that sought to force people to take these things. But he says in the memo that was written to staff, this is a profound revelation. For the first time, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines have killed American children. So this is a watershed moment. And for anyone out there who has been touched by one of these jabs, either directly or someone in your life that perhaps became sick, who died, who is maybe now disabled as a result, this is one step closer to getting to the truth that many of us already know. Having this revealed by an official government source gives it an air of legitimacy, and it makes it a lot more difficult. I hope that YouTube doesn't take this video down for medical misinformation, because I am quoting the FDA in an article by the New York Times. You can't get much more mainstream than that, but you never know. They hate me over there. All right, so the author, Vinay Prasad, described the findings as a profound revelation, and he called for sweeping changes to the vaccine approval process. This includes mandatory randomized controlled studies for every subgroup, which ensures there are going to be no more rushed authorizations like what we saw during the pandemic. This is also something that I think we've all been asking for a very long time. If we're going to be asked to trust science, then science has to be trustworthy. It must follow the scientific method. Otherwise, it is merely a whitewash in order to sell a product. Now, Prasad himself is an oncologist by training. That is a cancer doctor, but he's long questioned the blanket promotion of vaccines in general, not simply the vaccines for the pandemic, but also the use of masks. And his role at the FDA under RFK and President Trump marks a major shift towards greater scientific scrutiny. So ultimately, my hope is that through the revelations of what truly happened over the last several years, we can ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. Now, the memo doesn't detail exactly the ages, the underlying health concerns, or which specific vaccine brands were involved in these tragic cases. But if I had to guess, I would suggest that probably all of them have a fairly dangerous profile when it comes to children, from what we know about the propensity for children to even get sick and need something like this, a serious medical intervention with ingredients that are suspect at best. I don't think that there, in my opinion, is any way to do this part safely. Now, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Vaccine Advisory Committee is still set to discuss this review in an upcoming meeting, which, of course, is likely to lead to further revelations. Now, FDA Commissioner Marty Makary has come forward to back up the claims made in this memo. He made an appearance on Fox News specifically to talk about this, and he said plainly there were, it appears, 10 deaths of children from the COVID shots. Now, he also emphasized that the data stems from the Biden administration era, adding that while the vaccines may have benefited the high-risk elderly patients, we're still getting to the truth on all of that, pushing annual shots on young people is not based on science. Now, the development also aligns with actions from Health and Human Services Director RFK. He has very, very long time been an advocate of vaccine safety, and he has already restricted these jabs to people who are 65 and older with a qualifying health condition. They must also have a meeting and a consultation with a healthcare professional, that is a doctor. However, that may not be enough. You may want to have multiple consultations with multiple individuals. This is a full-out reversal of the previous push under past administrations, which included mandates forcing millions of people to engage in practices that were questionable in terms of their scientific benefit, as well as the carte blanche demand that people get shots like this regardless of their health profile or their underlying medical conditions. Very happy to see these sorts of things now being talked about. And I'm looking forward to this upcoming meeting so that we can get some further details about exactly what took place and exactly who is to blame. That's a little bit more on the nose right there. All right, now, I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, red. It doesn't matter to me who you are. If you are an abuser of children, then you deserve to have your mask ripped off. And although we may have a lot of cases of radical left-wing individuals who align with the Democrat Party being caught up in stings where they are caught by predator catchers or by local law enforcement, there are the occasional cases where Republicans are involved in the exact same practice. And I don't care who you are. Again, I find it just as disgusting and just as necessary to expose those people, even if they vote Republican. So here we are. Georgia Republican GOP Secretary Jaquan Stembridge. Over the weekend, a video came out which showed him attempting to meet a 14-year-old boy to abuse. Now, this video was filmed during a planned meetup in Athens, Georgia. Obviously, this guy fell for a honeypot. Once it began to spread online, Jaquan immediately locked down both his X account and his Instagram account so people couldn't call him out on his behavior. Stembridge has previously served as the state chairman of the Georgia Teen Republicans, and he's also currently a member of the Georgia Young Republicans. Now, in this video, at the top of the screen, what we have is the Predator Catchers video where Jaquan attempts to lie his way out of the events that are transpiring. And then in the lower half of the screen, you have a series of messages between Jaquan and the decoy, who clearly identifies himself as a 14-year-old boy. Let's take a look. I'm not from Georgia, so I've never seen this guy before, but I think everybody's going to know him now.
No, I don't. But I'm only, oh my God.
Are you 19 or are you 17?
I'm 17. I swear to God, I don't want my mom.
Okay. Then talk to me then. Don't lie to me. Are you 19 or are you 17?
I swear to God, on everything I live. Like, you can look at my
ID. Let me see the
I
ID.
don't have it. I'm for real.
Bruh, if you're 19, just say it. Nigga, you'll get way more respect with me being honest.
I swear to God, oh my God. Look, come here. Can you look at my tag? I swear to God, I don't even have a car in my name. I swear to God. I swear to God. You can call my mom. I swear to God, I'm only 17. Just please.
And just what the hell is it with people showing up? I don't care. I don't care what time of day it is. Why do people go out of the house wearing pajamas? Like, why do people leave the home wearing slides, a hoodie, and pajama bottoms or pajama top? Like, do you have no self-respect? Besides the fact that you're there to meet a child, do you not have any self-respect? I see a lot of people behaving in this way. I feel like it's totally trashy. Like, you know, I might leave here wearing like a tracksuit. That's about as low class as I'm going to get. You know, I mean, like, that's pretty comfy. But wearing your pajamas, I just don't get it.
Bruh, where's your ID at?
I don't have it. Like, look, check my pockets. Do whatever you want.
You in college? What you?
I'm in college. I'm like, I skipped the grade. So I swear to God.
Bruh, just,
you don't
you
think I'm
19, bruh.
All right, I'm 17. I swear to God, my birthday is July 12th. I swear
July
to God.
12th what?
I'm 18. I'm 18. I'm like,
I just got him. Man, this guy cannot stop lying. Of course he can't stop lying because he just got caught by predator catchers.
Bro, why you lying to me, bro?
What I was doing,
Why?
I swear to God, I wasn't trying.
College? What you?
I'm in college. I'm like, I skipped the grade. So I swear to God.
Bruh, just,
you don't
you
think I'm
19, bruh.
All right, I'm 17. I swear to God, my birthday is July 12th. I swear
July
to God.
12th what?
I'm 18.
You,
I'm 18. I'm like,
bro, why you lying to me,
what
bro?
I was doing,
Why?
I swear to God, I wasn't trying to make a cocaine. I would never do something like that. I swear to God. I'm just, can you try again?
Let me be 100.
These people are always like, I would never do anything like that. I was just messaging a 14-year-old boy because I was going to come here and scold him and tell him that you should not message adults online who say that they want to meet you for inappropriate activities.
Let me be 100 to you, because nigga, you already know what that shit is wrong.
I know.
I already peeped your behavior, nigga, driving around trying to peep the scene.
Okay, I'm
like,
sorry.
nigga, that shit ain't cool, nigga.
You're right.
Like,
You're right. I'm
there
sorry.
ain't none of that shit going on in Athens, bro. Like,
Right, my
delete
bad.
the profile, nigga,
Right.
or whatever, nigga.
I do it. I swear to God.
Apologize to Athens, though.
I apologize.
You gonna do that shit
I
again?
swear to God, I won't. I delete it. I put it on everything.
Look, it says right here in his profile, 19 male verse. I don't know what verse means. Maybe versatile?
I love my mom. I swear to God.
Alright, don't do that.
Anyways, he thought he was going to get away with it. YN, taking the video, went and put him on blast. Glad to see it. You cannot let these people get away with this stuff. They have to be exposed. Jim Kyle says, I wear my pillow slippers everywhere. All right, you know, I mean, occasionally I have been known to wear like I got some UGG slippers, which have like an outside sole on them, but like regular slippers. Jim, what are you doing? Anyways, Singing Pretty, thank you for the cookie. Sean Joe, thank you for the can. Red Gun 51, thank you for the can. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. Now, Jim, if you're wearing slippers, but you're also wearing like jeans, shorts, khakis, or something like that, it's not the same thing as showing up wearing your ratty, tattered, old bedclothes, which nobody is meant to see, except for your wife. Anyways, couple of tragic things happened over the weekend. There was this mass shooting that took place in Stockton, California. Now, as far as I'm aware, they still don't have a suspect. The really unfortunate part is that 4 people are dead. This was basically a kid's birthday party. Stockton has a heavy gang presence. They have offshoots of the Bloods and the Crips there. This is in California. And I can't say what this is about, but it does appear to be gang-related. Nobody is coming forward. They haven't found anybody. They haven't arrested anybody. But you have 4 children which were shot. This was at a local banquet hall. And the San Juan Sheriff's Department says it does appear to be a targeted attack. They don't have a motive yet. The children were from like ages like 6 to 21. It's just really unfortunate. Now, you know, I would imagine that Stockton has got to have some cameras. With as many people as were at this party, you would think that somebody would have seen something. The fact that nobody has identified a vehicle or a description of the suspect leads me to believe that there is some kind of like stop snitching culture that is going on here. Violence touched my life as a young person, and seeing our own children, parents, and neighbors go through this shakes me deeply. Stockton is my home. These are our families. This is our community. This is a quote from the Stockton Vice Mayor, Jason Lee, on Facebook. And it's a totally senseless crime. It does not make any sense. So I hope that they get this guy. I hope they get him. I've seen posts from gang members online, and they're like, you know, y'all, we didn't do it, but we're totally cool with it because like these people are family members of gang members or something like that. Like, get your life right, okay? Like, there's a huge problem that has led to us having gang culture here in the United States. It's not something that's going to be overturned overnight. It's probably going to be something that we could stamp out generationally. But for right now, we have people who are emboldened to do the absolute wrong thing, to believe that this is the kind of life you want to live. This is not the kind of life that you want to live. There is no future for your children living a life on the streets. So anyways, I can only hope that by President Trump bringing back manufacturing, production, helping Americans to be uplifted, giving people some sort of sense of pride in their community, that this is the kind of thing that eventually we won't have to worry about. You know, I would like nothing more than for America to be like what Sweden used to be like years ago. Everybody is fine. Everybody is happy. Everybody gets along, and you know your neighbors. You know, I mean, at a certain point, we had that same sort of thing here, and it's just been destroyed over the last 2 generations. Another really tragic event. A father and 3 of his children were driving home in Colorado, and the man's name, Alvin Corrado, 35 years old. His children, McKinley Corrado, 11, Toretto Corrado, 8, and their friend, Jace Green, 12. These are all from Colorado Springs, Colorado. They all died at around 4:40 p.m. on November 24th. This was, you know, right around Thanksgiving. Now, what really drew my attention to this story, first of all, obviously, senseless deaths. The father and these 3 kids, 2 of his kids, and then I believe he had 2 of his other children in the back seat who were not killed, but they saw everything. They saw like the tragic death of their father and their siblings. What drew my attention to this story is that the names of the family members were released by the authorities immediately. And the local police in Colorado Springs said the name of the other driver, the man who drove his car headfirst into this family, that family had requested his name not be released. Are you shitting me? This guy, who turns out to be a criminal of the worst stripes, okay, career felon, he's out on parole. He actually had carjacked a woman, stolen the car that he was driving, drove on the wrong side of the freeway, headfirst into this family, kills the father and the 3 children. And they were given the option to have this guy's name withheld for any length of time? No, I'm sorry. But like, this guy lost all rights to that. when he carjacked a woman, drove down the wrong side of the street, and then killed 4 people, a father and 3 young children who had their entire lives ahead of them. So they were driving a Ford sedan, and they were on Highway 83 in Douglas County. This Toyota, which was being driven by the carjacker, was driving down the wrong side of the road. His name is Walter Hewling. He was 31 years old, and not about an hour before he's driving down the wrong side of the street, he had ripped this woman out of her car, just took it, and then sped away. Anyways, Hewling was instantly killed in the crash, all right? And as I said, he was a career felon. He was out on parole at the time of the crash. He had 12 prior criminal cases between 2013 and 2024. That includes multiple assaults, violations of protective orders, bribery, burglary, DUI. The last time he was convicted was in 2019. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison. At that time, he assaulted a man and his wife and a police officer in Denver. Now, the district attorney for Douglas County, George Brockler, said Hewling should have never been on the streets. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Everybody knows this. And, you know, here is Walter Hewling's picture. I will hazard a guess and say that the reason they didn't want to identify him at the start was because of immutable characteristics that Mr. Hewling had no control over. They didn't want to portray a career criminal out on parole, responsible for the murder of 3 children and a father, in a true light. They didn't want people to know what was going on. This guy's criminal history, the DA said, and the fact that he appears to have been on parole, and this happened, seems like we are failing the community. Absolutely. You are failing the community. Now, like I said, there were 2 other kids in the car, and they survived the crash. They are hospitalized, but they are bad shape. Mia Corrado, 13, daughter of the father. She was listed in fair condition. Her mother said that when she woke up, she said, "Where's my dad?" And the mother had to tell her that her father and her siblings and her friend were all dead. As soon as she started telling the daughter, she said, "Mom, I know." And it turns out that she had been conscious for the whole thing. She was awake through the whole thing. They were just praying that she had been, you know, had her bell rung so bad that she didn't remember anything that was going on. But they knew that she was conscious when the police and the EMTs got there. She was awake the entire time. Can't even imagine. So not even 10 minutes after the intubation was taken out, Mia asked the question that we knew what was coming, asking where her dad was, and me answering with the news of her siblings and father's passing, and she just responded, "I know." She said Mia recalled in great detail every moment leading up to the accident itself, and how she was awake the whole time and even tried to help her father and her siblings. We were told by those on the scene that she was awake, but we were not prepared for all the details. We had hoped the trauma would have been blocked out by her brain. The things Mia saw and went through is something that no person should ever have to witness, let alone a 13-year-old witnessing happening to her very own family. This is what the left is supporting when they talk about compassionate release or they talk about cashless bail. They talk about people being over-prosecuted. No. No. This is exactly why we have prosecution. This is exactly why we put people in prison. Now, there is an argument to be made that when people go to prison, there should probably be a greater effort placed on rehabilitation. If I can be frank, I don't think there is any effort placed on rehabilitation. I think that people basically go to prison and they come out better criminals. If they know what they're doing, they come out better criminals, or they come out horribly disfigured spiritually. They come out with PTSD because they've been victimized themselves while they were in there. Terrible things happen. But prison is not supposed to be summer camp. And if you can't get your life together and the only way that you think that you can get ahead is to victimize other people, then I'm sorry, but that's what you signed up for. So anyways, tragic story, and I hope that Mia and her other sibling are going to be okay. That's not the kind of thing that anybody should have to deal with. All right, we got to check in with Letitia Peekaboo James. because Letitia Pkwy James and her legal team appeared to be getting leaks from the Department of Justice. Also, the Department of Justice was leaking to a whole bunch of newsrooms. So Sam Antar says here, obstruction of justice. That's what he is accusing the DOJ of engaging in. 47 illegal leaks, 9 newsrooms, 1 coordinated operation. Now, he wrote an article. We're just going to read through the thread. Who inside the Department of Justice coordinated with Letitia James's legal team, Reuters, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and The New York Times to sabotage their own prosecution? I don't know. It's a good question. I hope that Pam Bondi or somebody at the DOJ is paying attention. This is the kind of thing that we should no longer have to worry about. But a federal judge cited news reports as her source for what a U.S. attorney privately communicated to DOJ leadership. That should never happen. We are not supposed to be having leaks of this caliber coming out of this administration. Now, it remains to be seen if they're going to treat it in the way that I believe it should be treated. If somebody is leaking to the media in the way that it appears they were leaking to the media, those people not only deserve to be fired, but they deserve to be prosecuted. Those news reports came from an anonymous government source who broke federal law. The same leaks made it into Abby Lowell's legal filings, Letitia James's lawyers, into the congressional record, into a federal judge's ruling. 47 leaks. Every one of them helped Letitia James. 0 of these leaks helped the prosecution. I have the receipts, Sam says. I documented every leak. I traced the pipeline. I followed the trail from anonymous sources to headlines, to defense motions, to amicus briefs, to congressional letters, to a federal judge's ruling. This is the story they don't want you to read. Well, here is how it works. Government insiders illegally leak information to reporters. Reporters publish, knowing the disclosures were criminal. Defense counsel cited the media reports in court filings. Amicus briefs repeated the leaked claims. A sitting congressman cited the same leaks in official correspondence. A federal judge cited news reports in her ruling. Guess what? That's not journalism. That's information laundering, and it's the same type of deep state tactic that we've seen played out time and time again. If you'll remember, years ago, I want to believe, there have been a number of times that the federal government has witnessed a leak taking place to journalists, an illegal leak. And the journalist then has pressure put on them because a crime was committed. Why can't that happen here? Why is the DOJ not going hard to figure out who is the leaky ship? Now, the media's 4-month silence. Sam Antar published his first investigation on February 8th, 2025, documenting phantom mortgages, mathematical impossibilities, contradictory sworn statements, and between February and mid-September, 9 major newsrooms published nothing. No investigative reports, no document analysis, no examination of the evidence sitting in public databases that anyone could access. Reuters didn't look. The New York Times didn't look. The Washington Post didn't look. ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, none of them bothered to take a look. They were not investigating because they were waiting. They were waiting for the phone calls from anonymous sources within the DOJ. And when the leaks came, they published instantly. When the documents were there all along, they were silent. Again, that is not journalism. That's stenography for saboteurs. So, about this sabotage, the media portrays Eric Siebert and career prosecutors as principled officials who stood up to political pressure. But Siebert had access to 40 years of documentary evidence, 5 months of FBI investigation with subpoena power, 115,000 pages of documents. And he concluded, you all know, insufficient evidence. Then someone leaked that conclusion to 9 newsrooms. Well, there are only 2 explanations. Number 1, Siebert never seriously reviewed the evidence. I think that's likely. His insufficient evidence conclusion was worthless, and whoever leaked it was disseminating a conclusion based on nothing. Option 2, Siebert actually did review the evidence. He recognized it supported the charges, and he refused to act. His refusal wasn't principled. It was protection of a politically powerful defendant. Either way you slice it, someone leaked his conclusion to 9 newsrooms on the same day he resigned. That's not a coincidence. That's what you call coordination, not whistleblowing, sabotage. Now, Abby Lowell dismissed Sam Antar's evidence as uncorroborated findings of an internet investigator who did his job when everybody else failed to do theirs, including the DOJ, including the FBI, including the so-called media outlets that only reported on the fact that Letitia James was not going to be prosecuted by Eric Siebert. Here are the sources, as you well know, because we've gone over this evidence since the moment it was revealed. Property records from county clerks. ACRIS filings accessible to anyone. Financial disclosures on government websites. Mathematical impossibilities. Anyone can verify. But in his motion to dismiss, Lowell cited as authoritative legal evidence the work of the mainstream media. ABC News citing sources familiar with the matter. CNN citing a source familiar with the matter. Washington Post citing anonymous officials. MSNBC citing government insiders. Public records, anyone can verify, are somehow, in this instance, uncorroborated. Anonymous sources committing federal crimes, well, that is credible enough for the federal court. That is the standard of Letitia James's defense attorney, Abby Lowell. Now, the news outlets, the so-called news outlets, ignored some pretty important stuff. The indictment documented Letitia James making contradictory sworn statements about the same property. To the bank, she said one thing. Well, it's a second home. It's for personal use. To the insurance company, she said another thing. It's owner-occupied. To the IRS, something entirely different. It's a rental property with 0 personal use days. But to New York State, where she was the attorney general, it was an investment property. 4 different sworn statements, 4 different classifications. That's a mathematical impossibility. Nobody at Reuters reported on it. Nobody at the New York Times even bothered to mention it. The New York Post, they had absolutely no mention of it. ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, not a single one chose to report on it. Lawfare's Molly Roberts, she's a journalist with no law degree reporting on law, called this case dangerously weak without mentioning the fact that Letitia James had 4 different sworn statements to 4 different legal entities, which put herself in the crosshairs of getting indicted. The amicus briefs that were wrote on Letitia James's case also conveniently ignored it. The letter from Congressman Garcia didn't mention Letitia James's conflicting statements. Every single outlet that called the case weak did so by failing to mention the strongest evidence against the person they were protecting. This is like a reverse wrap-up smear. Again, not journalism, it's protection of the people that they want to protect. Again, someone leaked misleading grand jury information to the New York Times. Lawfare's Anna Boer amplified that leaked information on Twitter. She called it important exculpatory evidence. Prosecutor Lindsay Halligan tried to correct this false narrative while explicitly refusing to disclose grand jury material. Why did she do that? Because it's the freaking law. And Lindsay Halligan is a lawyer who understands the law. She refused to not follow the law. The response from Lawfare, they did a 30-minute piece framing Lindsay Halligan as a villain. But the leakers are getting away scot-free. They face no consequences. The prosecutors who followed the rules become the story. It's like when they write a story, they wrote a story about me, they wrote a story about John, they wrote a story about CanCon, where we talked about the emails that were released from the Jeffrey Epstein estate, which Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell discussed the likelihood that Donald Trump is an FBI informant, that Donald Trump is the reason that Jeffrey Epstein was caught up in a legal mess. And they say, my reporting on Jeffrey Epstein's belief that Donald Trump was the FBI informant was done so without evidence. Well, I was merely quoting details provided from the Epstein estate in an email that Jeffrey Epstein wrote to Ghislaine Maxwell. I'm the story, the news, the actual stuff they're supposed to be reporting. That's not what gets reported on. Zak Paine is a ridiculous conspiracy theorist who reports without evidence. No. You don't report on the news. This is newsworthy right here. Leakers who are giving fake news to the New York Times and such, those people deserve to be prosecuted. All of it amplified narratives that were built on leaks that were done criminally. They attacked the prosecutor, Lindsay Halligan, who followed the law. And then those amicus briefs, you had 4 coordinated briefs that were written by former federal judges, former DOJ officials, leaders in Congress. Every single one failed to mention any of the evidence that we have discussed on this program on so many different occasions. They only cited newspaper articles as evidence. That's not evidence. That's a circular firing squad designed to get Letitia James off the hook. Every single one repeated claims from anonymous sources who broke federal law. No one ever mentioned the 115,000 pages of documents. On November 14th, 2025, the lawyers for Letitia James filed that motion requesting more time to review discovery because more than 17,000 documents and 115,000 pages had been turned over in discovery by the federal government. 3 days after requesting more time to review those 115,000 pages, she claimed there wasn't enough of it. The defense's own filings contradicted each other, but the leak narrative was too strong. No one noticed. On November 19th, 2025, Congressman Robert Garcia sent that official letter demanding the investigation of Bill Pulte. Who were his sources? The same leaked media reports in the fake news, New York Times, Washington Post et al. Garcia cited anonymous government sources to demand an investigation of research that was done with public records. He even demanded all communications and documents relating to any communications with Sam Antar, the genius internet researcher who figured all this out in the absence of any higher level of thought by so-called mainstream media sources. He even demanded communications, public property records, county clerk databases, government websites. Those things are publicly available. Go ahead and take a look yourself. Garcia wants to investigate the person bringing this story to the forefront and treated 47 illegal leaks like they were just established fact. So the media is now running stories about whether Pulte, Martin, or others are improperly coordinating with outside parties. But the documented coordination, the coordination with receipts that was done by the people who are likely going to face charges again in this case, everything was flowing in the wrong direction. Government insiders leaking to reporters, reporters publishing unknown information, knowing these sources were committing federal crimes, defense counsel citing those same media reports, those amicus briefs amplifying those same media reports, a congressman repeating those same media reports, a federal judge referencing those same media reports. This is coordination. It's a pipeline of lies, and the media was simply the delivery mechanism. So this indictment was dismissed again on a procedural technicality, which is the appointments clause. It was never dismissed on the evidence. It was not deemed to be vindictive prosecution. It was merely a technicality. So the DOJ is going to return with a superseding indictment, which is not only going to cover the original charges that were dismissed without prejudice by this federal judge because of these so-called leaks, but it will also likely cover the additional properties that we have spoken about ad nauseum. And this time it will be during the 2026 election cycle. This dismissal has not saved Letitia James. It has merely delayed the inevitable. Good luck to you, Letitia James, because you, my friend, are going to need it. All right. Before we continue, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. If you'll merely indulge me a moment. All right. So first of all, again, if you haven't hit that like button, please do so. Also, thank you again to Sean Joe for the cookie. Thank you also, Leslie, over there on Twitter. Appreciate you. All right. So if you or someone you love, you guys, struggles with blood sugar and A1C, this is a message that you need to hear. It is well known that expensive medications, those popular shots that a lot of people are taking, have dangerous side effects. Well, Creator's Bounty has developed the perfect alternative. It's an herbal supplement, and it's called Elohitrim. Elohitrim is a 100% natural formula that is proven to dramatically lower your blood sugar and A1C. It uses 7 healthy ingredients. There are no stimulants, no junk. These 7 ingredients, if you bought them all separately, would cost you over $150. But here's the best part. There's no bad side effects, only good ones. We're talking sugar cravings totally gone, inflammation reduced, stable energy all day without any crashes. And seriously, most people are getting better results than they did on those harsh medications, but without any of the risks. Now, Elohitrim is made in the USA at an FDA-registered facility. It's fully tested and backed by a no-questions-asked 90-day money-back guarantee. And the friendly folks at Creator's Bounty offer fast and free shipping 5 days a week from their location in Oklahoma. You can use the QR code on screen. You can use the link in the description. creatorsbounty.com/rumble, and you can get up to 50% off. Thank you very much to Elohitrim and the people at Rumble. Appreciate it. Well, Helio Umberto, that's why they have that 90-day money-back guarantee. So if they don't work, if you don't like what they do, you can get your cash back, no problem. So it's up to you. It's up to you. Thank you very much to Rumble. All right, so moving on from the work of Sam Antar. Thank you, L.A. Martinez05, who says, hello, Z. Thank you for the cookie. One Thunder, thank you for the can. Appreciate you. All right, and next, let's talk about Eric Swalwell. We got to do an update on Eric Swalwell. I told you last week about the lawsuit that he has filed. He's also now released a video talking about this lawsuit. He is appealing to social media. Let's take a listen to Eric Swalwell, the everyman now running for governor in California. Of course, he's ineligible to run for governor of California, but he's hoping that this lawsuit is going to save him. I might have to refresh.
I've decided to go on offense. Donald Trump is weaponizing the Department of Justice against his political opponents. In fact, you've probably seen lately, they're going after the mortgages of Adam Schiff, Tish James, Lisa Cook from the Fed Board, and now me, and it's all nonsense. It's because I've been a vocal critic against the president. I'm one of the only surviving lawsuits against him for what he did on January 6th. I was an impeachment manager, and I'm leading the effort in Congress today on January 6th to make sure they don't rewrite it. I'm not going to let him retaliate or make me go silent for what he is doing in our country. You know, the only side of the ball I ever want to be on is offense. So I have brought a privacy suit and a First Amendment retaliation suit against the administration. That's the only language they understand. I hope you take a look at it, and I hope it telegraphs that what Democrats are going to do when we're in the majority and when we have more blue state governors is be on offense and hold them accountable. I've decided
Eric Swalwell is living in a fantasy world because Eric Swalwell is filing a frivolous lawsuit that seeks to distract from the evidence that has been presented to disqualify him from his race for California governor, and also to cover up the fairly ample evidence of his own mortgage fraud. Eric Swalwell, I think, is not going to get very far with this lawsuit because there are a number of issues that really put him in a bad position. Now, he has said in that video, I was an impeachment manager. Okay, so what? The impeachment that went absolutely nowhere. The claims in his lawsuit are that Director Pulte, by referencing his public mortgage paperwork, again, just like Letitia James, it's all public, mentioning this in his DOJ referral, somehow violated the Privacy Act and the First Amendment by claiming that this publicly available document was somehow private. It wasn't, and again, you yourself, anyone in this audience, can go download this publicly available information. Now, he also claims that he had included a sworn affidavit with his mortgage stating that his D.C. residence was his wife's primary residence rather than his own. This is also untrue. It is completely baseless. There is no merit to this claim. Every mortgage executed in Washington, D.C. appears on a public database. I'm going to give you the website so you can go verify right now. mytax.dc.gov. This is the location of where Eric Swalwell's publicly available mortgage documents were downloaded from. This is where his deed of trust for his home at 209 South Northeast Street was downloaded. And it was also published multiple times by a series of different journalistic outlets, including the Gateway Pundit. Again, this document is public. That is a legal framework. It must be available by public, and it has been available online for many years. There is nothing private about it. And Director Pulte merely referenced the same public file in his DOJ referral. Under law, there is no privacy to violate. Boom. That claim has just been dispensed with. So his claim that his privacy was violated is meritless, and it is also an unserious claim, and it exposes that his lawsuit is merely a political smokescreen designed to feed the left-wing media, just as the leaks about Letitia James's investigation were also designed to feed the left-wing media and to create a narrative that might distract the public from the true issue at hand, which, again, we have discussed at length. Eric Swalwell is in violation of California's residency requirements. Now, in his public second claim, Eric Swalwell never included this alleged affidavit that he mentions as an exhibit in his lawsuit, almost certainly because it doesn't exist. It also doesn't exist in the publicly available database of information related to Eric Swalwell's marriage. In fact, his online deed of trust contains no language anywhere where Swalwell makes this claim that the property will be his principal residence, nor does it include the so-called affidavit that he mentions. There is no rider. There is no direct statement indicating that the home is going to be used exclusively by his wife or that he is not going to live there. On top of that, we have no residence that Eric Swalwell owns, rents, or otherwise resides in the state of California. So both Eric Michael Swalwell and Brittany Watts Swalwell are listed on this property as joint borrowers. They jointly signed the deed of trust, and the only affidavit they signed pertains solely to the DC tax classification for a residential property. So in short, the mortgage contains no disclaimer from Eric Swalwell and includes no language assigning the home to his wife alone. The public deed of trust for this D.C. home that Eric Swalwell and his wife share was dated April 18th of 2022, and it only confirms one thing, that the property is designated as his principal residence. That, again, is a condition of the loan that Eric and Brittany received for this property. Clause 8 of that same document includes this line: material representations include, but are not limited to, representations concerning borrower's occupancy of the property as the borrower's principal residence. That is a very specific legal term, and that particular legal term, considering that it's in Washington, D.C., is what disqualifies Eric Swalwell to run as governor in the state of California. In the deed of trust, Swalwell and his wife, again, are both listed as borrowers. The document is a District of Columbia deed of trust. It contains the standard federal Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac provisions for owner-occupant primary residence declaration. So even if Swalwell had mailed in a self-serving affidavit to his lender at some later date in the hopes that he would still be able to run for governor of California, the document would mean nothing legally because all of the legal documents are contained in these publicly available documents. An affidavit, simply because you write it up at some point in the future, does not supersede, void, negate, nor modify any clear written terms of a fully executed contract. A borrower cannot unilaterally rewrite a mortgage via affidavit. these very specific legal documents are fairly important because it doesn't matter if it is in terms of a mortgage, in terms of a company that you start, in terms of a legal agreement that you enter into. The only thing that matters is what you signed and what's on paper. I want everybody to remember these concepts because they will come up time and time again. It doesn't matter because the only thing that matters is what's on paper, what is legally binding. This is rooted in the peril evidence rule. This rule is based on the principle that once a contract is reduced to a final written document, the parties are bound by the terms of that document. Further affidavits must be explicitly referenced and incorporated into original mortgage documents. They must be executed by both parties, or they must be tied to a condition of approval. It cannot negate any clause in the mortgage document. Therefore, any affidavit added by Swalwell would not modify the mutually agreed principal residence occupancy clause. By signing a mortgage declaring a D.C. property as his principal residence, Eric Swalwell confirmed under law that Washington, D.C. is his domicile, not the state of California. That one simple fact is what disqualifies California's governor race from allowing Eric Swalwell to take part under the California Constitution and the California Elections Code number 349. This is what means that Eric Swalwell is legally disqualified from becoming governor, and he must withdraw his announcement immediately. As we learned last week, there has been a formal complaint filed with the Secretary of State of California demanding Eric Swalwell remove his name from ballot consideration because of the aforementioned evidence. The lawsuit filed by Eric Swalwell is not a principled defense of his constitutional rights. It is a panicked, last-ditch publicity stunt to rescue his collapsing candidacy. The facts are straightforward. The documents speak for themselves, and the law is unambiguous. Now, because Eric Swalwell did this in Washington, D.C., he is bound by the laws of Washington, D.C., but because he's running for governor of California, allegedly, he is also bound by the laws of California. This could happen in any state. It could happen in Arizona. It could happen in North Dakota. It could happen in Florida. It could happen in Wyoming. It doesn't matter. There are laws that bind certain things within certain states. Depending on which state you are operating out of, that is what is going to matter. Now, Eric Swalwell got a mortgage in Washington, D.C., and he did not stipulate that this was not going to be his principal residence. His loan, his deed, everything is based upon this home in D.C. being his principal residence. He does not maintain a principal residence, a domicile in the state of California, and so again, Eric Swalwell cannot run for governor. The law is clear. The law is unambiguous. The law is plain. And that is how the law is meant to work. Now, it is also meant to work in cases of judicial malfeasance. One such judge who has acted outside of the boundaries of good faith, ethics, and his duties as a federal judge is Judge James Boasberg, also out of Washington, D.C. Now, Judge James Boasberg and it would appear Deborah Boardman have both been called up on what looks like impeachment charges. We've learned about this some time ago, but the Senate impeachment hearing of Judge James Boasberg is now actually taking place. The only problem is Judge Boasberg has refused to appear for his own impeachment. Let's take a listen to Kevin here and see what's going on.
A legal storm is brewing on Capitol Hill. U.S. District Judges James Boasberg and Deborah Boardman both turning down requests to testify at a Senate hearing this week entitled Impeachment, Holding Judges Accountable. Boasberg, whose series of judgments regarding the Trump administration have ignited a legal firestorm, including his decision to restrict the White House's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans. There have also been questions about his apparent role in Arctic Frost, that FBI investigation that allegedly tracked the private communications and phone calls of nearly a dozen Republican lawmakers. As for Boardman, well, no stranger to controversy after ruling against the administration's effort to restrict birthright citizenship. So the question is, where do things go from here? And we want to discuss all that with another great legal eagle, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree. Tom, good to have you with us. I don't think I'm breaking any news by saying Judge Boasberg is legal enemy number one in many cases, especially from the Trump administration's perspective. What, if anything, do you make of his refusal to testify?
What's interesting to me is that Judge Boasberg refusing to testify, he is abdicating any ability to defend himself or any of the actions that he's taken. He is also, of course, refusing to place himself in a position where he could be deposed under oath to answer any of the questions about his questionable behavior during the Arctic Frost investigation. This is going to make it far easier to impeach Judge Boasberg because he will refuse to defend any of the actions that he took. I eagerly anticipate what this hearing is going to appear to be. Because normally I would say it would be rather difficult to get Judge Boasberg impeached. I mean, he's already been impeached in the House. Now the trial here is in the Senate. Will it be possible for him to get the 60 votes that are necessary to have him removed from the bench? Will it be possible to have Boardman removed from the bench? I can only hope. It's a long shot, but it may happen.
Well, Kevin, I thought you put it well, that neither of these judges is any stranger to controversy. Yeah. And the fact that both judges have declined to testify before the Senate doesn't surprise me in the least. They were invited to a hearing to testify about their possible impeachment. I can promise you that the last thing in the world they would want to do or have any interest in doing is answering questions under oath from the United States senators. So it doesn't surprise me they took a pass. My guess is that this hearing will still go forward, and it may just be a discussion. Maybe they got other witnesses, or the senators just discuss and look into the substance of the rulings that they're concerned about.
Especially as it relates to Boasberg. Let me share this sound. This is Ron Johnson talking about some of the questionable decisions, not just things that have happened in the past, but that
the other aspect of Judge Boasberg potentially being successfully impeached may rest upon his decision to order senators and congressmen to be spied upon without being alerted to that fact, because that is when you really start messing with the established rules. Now, it didn't happen to any Democrats. It only happened to Republicans. So it may be that some Democrats, the handful of Democrats that they need to successfully remove Judge Boasberg, may be willing to get on board with this because they care about civil liberties, or maybe they care about themselves potentially being spied upon in the future.
Broadly paint his legal judgment, let's just say, in an unfavorable light for many. Listen to this.
What Judge Boasberg did in issuing these non-disclosure orders, I believe, is illegal. So we sent a letter to Judge Boasberg to answer. Did he not know about that law? Did Jack Smith not disclose that to him? He's got till December 4th to respond to us. I hope he does.
He says, I hope he does. Listen, this Arctic Frost thing is not going away, Tom. It is damning, I think, and that's being generous.
And it is being generous. Damning is one thing. Implications of impropriety are one thing. But illegal actions taken by a rogue federal judge in a rogue district like the District of Columbia, that's another thing entirely. And I would sincerely hope that the DOJ would take a look at this and bring charges against Judge James Boasberg for the actions that he took, because this is so much bigger than simply a couple of heavy-handed motions. This truly was a series of illegal actions that Judge Boasberg took in collusion with the administration prior to President Trump, working with the special counsel's office, trying to do anything they could to get congressmen and senators embroiled in some type of legal battle. They thought that they could simply spy on them and that Donald Trump was never going to return to office. But what they didn't count on was that he was going to come back, and it was going to bite them in the ass.
Yeah, and look, I think the way the Senate is going to proceed here is hear from other witnesses. I mean, they may have a chance to talk to Jack Smith. They can talk to other people who were involved in this.
Jack Smith is not going to come forward. He's already said he will not be testifying before any committee within the Senate because he does not believe that he can do so without impeaching himself, without embroiling himself in further legal trouble. Remember, Marsha Blackburn had said that Jack Smith will only come forward if we give him immunity. Fat chance. That's not going to happen.
I think trying to get a federal judge to come and testify about what went into his decision-making is a difficult task. Typically, judges do not go and testify about the substance of their rulings or their reasoning before the Senate. So my guess here, if the Senate wants to look into it, they're going to be looking into other witnesses and other evidence to try to get a better handle on what actually happened here.
Listen, it's one thing to complain about Judge Boasberg. It's another thing to actually act to do something. Let me share his background, and I think it is fairly clear, even to someone who might generally lean left. This is not really, to me, at least as I look at it from a layman's perspective, the actions of someone who is not a partisan. And that's, again, not even talking about Arctic frost. Can a person like this be impeached? And if so, how does that happen?
Yeah.
He was appointed by Barack Obama. He was the presiding judge of the FISA court during 2020 to 2021, and he oversaw the FISA court that authorized surveillance on certain members of President Trump's 2016 campaign. Judge Boasberg has been embedded as a deep state asset since the very beginning of the plot to destroy and remove President Donald Trump. And Judge Boasberg needs to be held accountable.
The standard for impeaching a federal judge is the same standard that you would use to impeach a president or other federal officials. You basically need to show bribery, treason, or high crimes and misdemeanors. And if you look back at our nation's history, we have impeached and removed federal judges, but not as many as you might think, a dozen or so. Typically, they would be removed and impeached for things like accepting bribes or failing to pay taxes or something unrelated to the substance of their rulings. Traditionally, the way that we would handle judges who kind of go off their rails and make crazy wrong-headed rulings is by challenging those rulings to the appellate court. And in this case, keep in mind that Judge Boasberg was reversed by the higher courts in this very case. That's typically the way that we would handle situations where you see judges just not fairly applying the law or ruling from partisan motives. You go to the appeals court or even the United States Supreme Court and get those decisions reversed.
Yeah, and that's been happening.
In the instance of Judge Boasberg, I would posit that the situation is so dire that we simply cannot allow this to continue happening. Judge Boasberg made rulings that were not only partisan, but they were illegal. He cannot be allowed to remain on the federal bench. And I go back to something I've suggested on many different occasions. Congress needs to defund the D.C. District Court. The D.C. District Court is completely out of control. I've said many times that blackmail is the currency of Washington, D.C. Blackmail goes both ways. And the corrupt members of Congress who have been controlled by rogue elements within the federal government, I believe, need to be shown the light. They need to be given sufficient motivation to do the right thing. And I believe that is possible. However, I also believe that people who would be in a position to do that are perhaps too morally guided to allow something like that to cross their minds. And unfortunately, I think that's a shame because I believe that we need to fight fire with fire. We are dealing with a different type of criminal in today's modern age. This is a very, very different situation than anything we have had to mess with before. And these people understand one thing, and from my perspective, that is crime and criminality. All right, now, let's also talk about another mortgage absconder. That would be this time Ruben Gallego. We have information coming from Kari Lake, who says that Ruben Gallego is guilty of taking a $940,000 VA guaranteed loan for a home in Washington, D.C. that was fraudulently secured back in 2022 because he listed this residence as his primary residence. Again, this is the same type of thing we continue to see over and over again. Now, Ruben Gallego had, of course, run against Kari Lake in the 2024 general election for this U.S. Senate seat, but Kari Lake, mysteriously, under vague circumstances, was unable to make it through that election. She said in a recent interview, when we start to dig further into the election fraud that's been happening for a long time in Arizona, I think there's going to be hell to pay. I hope that that is the case. I believe that is where we're going towards. But despite being a congressman from Arizona at the time Ruben Gallego was running against Kari Lake, he listed that Washington, D.C. home and his Phoenix, Arizona home both as primary residences. Of course, he did this to secure more favorable loan terms and more favorable insurance rates. Gallego abused the Department of Veterans Affairs Home Loan Program, which is designed to make it easier for veterans to buy a home with a lower down payment and a lower interest rate for use as a primary residence. But as we have told you time and time again, you cannot have two primary residences. Apparently, unless you are a public servant, unless you're a sitting member of Congress or the Attorney General of the state of New York or somebody sitting on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, then apparently you can have multiple primary residences. Now, when Arizona Senate candidate, this was reported by Politico in 2023, bought a house near Capitol Hill last year, he claimed the Washington property as his primary residence as part of a special mortgage rate afforded to military veterans. But Gallego and his wife also stay at a home they own in Phoenix as their primary residence. The loan documents for this Washington property, which were obtained by Politico, confirmed he counts D.C. as his primary home, even though his campaign maintains he resides in Arizona. Now, politically, it means the Democrat congressman aiming to take out Senator Kristen Sinema in a hotly contested Senate race next year may have to explain why he declared he was primarily a resident of the nation's capital. Gallego signed terms for a Veterans Affairs-backed loan in which he agreed to occupy, establish, and use the property as the borrower's principal residence within 60 days, according to that loan document. Now, in September 2024, Kari Lake highlighted this very scandal and at the same time condemned Gallego's horrendous record, including his involvement in opening a bank for illegal aliens that defaulted and robbed its clients. He also worked for a company that settled for $2.8 million in a Medicare fraud investigation, and he walked out on his wife when she was 9 months pregnant to shack up with a D.C. lobbyist with whom he had a secret wedding. All of it very appropriate for a so-called public servant living in the D.C. sewer. Notably, his marriage license with wife Sydney Gallego is also from Washington, D.C. I actually live in this state, and on federal forms, he says he lives in Washington, D.C. That's his main residence, Kari Lake said. Let's go ahead and hear from Kari Lake herself. This is while she was on the campaign trail. Oops,
if you are
need to wait for this commercial.
Background where he defrauded Latino immigrants out of their life savings, and he defrauded Medicare, and he walked out on his wife when she was 9 months pregnant, and you know, there's so much garbage in this guy's background, and I'm shocked that you guys don't cover that. Every day, if I sneeze in the wrong direction, you guys write a hit piece on me, especially the Republic. They got a columnist over there who's obsessed with me, almost in a dangerous obsession with me, and it's a hit piece every day. If I had one of the hits that Ruben Gallego has, then I would expect that kind of coverage, but I don't, and he does. Where are the stories on Ruben Gallego's background?
Well, as we know, the so-called mainstream media protects their own. They protect the corrupt actions of so-called civil servants who seek to enrich themselves and take advantage of the simple folk of America. telling them that they're just like us. But at the end of the day, they're nothing like us, are they? They are nothing like us. These people are degenerates. They are criminals. They have no regard for the law. We're not simple. We're not easily duped. The mainstream media treats us with disrespect. They believe they can lie to us. They believe they can cover up for their friends in high places, for their ivory-towered coastal elite friends like Ruben Gallego, who also happens to be the son, if I'm not mistaken, isn't he the son of a cartel boss? Or is that was that Tony out of Texas? I don't know. I can't get them all mixed up. There's just so much crime and criminality and corruption going around Washington, D.C. I get confused.
Have you done a story yet that he defrauded Medicare? And he was involved in a company that was under federal investigation for defrauding Medicare. Have any of you done that story? Have you done a story about how he ran a bank, opened a bank, was a director at a bank for illegal immigrants that then got investigated for fraud for bilking these primarily Latino immigrants out of their life savings? How about a story on the fact that he's lying about when he got married to his second wife? He got married to her in 2019, and then in 2020, he acted like he just popped the question, even though they'd been married for several months. And then later that year, they act like they got married, even though they got married about a year earlier. If you're going to lie about this kind of stuff, you're going to lie directly to the American people.
And they do.
And shame on you guys for not covering it. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt, but it's been despicable, the coverage of Ruben Gallego.
They're not willing to discuss the truth about Ruben Gallego. Now, here is Kari Lake talking about the situation with Ruben Gallego's mortgage fraud. Now, got to wait for this real quick. Okay, while we're waiting for that, let me very briefly tell you guys about a special offer from our friends over here at Rumble. You guys, if you're looking for smarter ways to browse and enjoy your favorite content without ads, you've got to get the Perplexity Pro bundle with Rumble Premium for just $19.99 a month when you sign up before December 31st. Normally, it's a $29.99 value. With Rumble Premium, you'll get an ad-free viewing experience across all your devices and access to exclusive premium content with no interruptions, just the videos and the streams that you love anytime, anywhere. And you're also going to get Perplexity Pro. That boosts your productivity with unlimited research, unlimited uploads, exclusive member perks, and access to the latest and most advanced AI models for faster, smarter answers every day. You can save over 30% on this powerful bundle by heading to rumble.com/premium before the 31st of December to sign up and unlock your premium experience. You can use the QR code or the link that you see down below. Thank you very much to Rumble and Perplexity. Now, let's take a listen to Kari Lake breaking down Ruben Gallego's mortgage fraud. Oop, hold on.
Done something that Adam Schiff has done, and we believe Letitia James has done, used the tax code to their advantage, lied about their primary residence, and got some sort of sweetheart loan.
I take issue, Eric, with your phrasing there. It's not using the tax code to their advantage. It is abusing the tax code and fraudulently receiving an interest rate and an insurance premium rate by lying about where you live, by claiming that you have more than one primary residence. If you or I had this type of thing happen to us, they would easily prosecute us. And at the very least, we would end up getting charged all kinds of fines and fees.
Owning agreement deals illegally, right?
Mm-hmm. I remember covering this, I ran against this guy in the Senate race, and, the media just ignored the story. When he applied for his application for a mortgage in Arizona, he said Arizona was his main residence. When he applied for one in D.C., he said D.C. is his main residence. Now, there's a couple of problems there. If D.C. is your main residence and you're lying on a federal form, then you really cannot serve the people of Arizona. You have to be a resident of the state of Arizona to be a representative, which is what he was at the time. But furthermore, it was a special VA loan that was designed to help people who were part of the military afford to buy their first home. And he used that, according to documents, to buy a nearly $1 million home in the D.C. area. and said it was his main residence. It had to be your main residence to get that sweet deal on the mortgage. And when he did that, he basically took away, I think it was over $900,000 is what the loan was, that ability for another veteran or military member to get that money, because there's only so much money in the program, and he took it away from others who deserved it. So I think he needs to fess up and explain, where does he really live? Is his main residence in D.C. or is it in Arizona?
Well, as we know, Ruben Gallego couldn't be a senator for the state of Arizona if his primary residence was in Washington, D.C. Kari Lake not only talking about the fraud of Ruben Gallego, but also talking about the United States Agency for Global Media, which she is the CEO of. She spoke about the corruption and the taxpayer-funded left-wing globalist propaganda that she was discovering within her own agency, and for months she has been on a crusade to expose the rot within this federal agency. Now, it can be recalled that Kari Lake gave bombshell testimony before the House Foreign Affairs Committee on the U.S. Agency for Global Media's record of fraud, waste, mismanagement, self-dealing, national security failures. This was back in June. And since that time, she has discovered even more of those things. Now, if you don't know, this agency was established back in 1994. It oversees taxpayer-funded grantee news outlets, which includes Voice of America, the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, the Middle East Broadcasting Networks, Radio Free Asia, Radio Free Europe, and Radio Free Liberty. The intent of these organizations is soft power, essentially, to deliver news and information to people worldwide. However, it's not just news. It is content that has become produced and infested with the same type of leftist ideology and globalist propaganda that we see here in the United States of America. The only difference is that this is funded by taxpayers to the tune of nearly $1 billion per year. Now, Kari Lake revealed in an interview that one of the grantees, Radio Free Asia, shut down their operations and began auctioning off equipment that was worth thousands of dollars. They did this for pennies on the dollar, and now they falsely claimed it was necessary because the U.S. government had not paid them. However, this auction was shut down by Kari Lake, and she sent in auditors to find out where every single penny went. Now, while speaking with the Gateway Pundit, she explained that Radio Free Asia was attempting to offload millions of dollars worth of equipment that was paid for by you and I, by the American taxpayer. Whether it was HD cameras that cost thousands of dollars, some cases they were tens of thousands of dollars, to teleprompters, full-on literal news sets being sold for pennies. This represents a national security issue. This equipment also included hard drives, laptops. You simply can't sell off U.S. government equipment to the lowest bidder. And you also have to have verification that these drives have been cleaned, they have been scrubbed of any sensitive U.S. government information. This might be problematic if it gets into the hands of certain bad actors. And despite the claims of Radio Free Asia that they stopped programming and they began auctioning equipment because they weren't receiving money, Kari Lake says we have paid them every single penny that was appropriated to them. She also revealed the interesting timing of this move to end news coverage and begin this fire sale. It coincided directly with President Trump's trip to Busan, South Korea for the 2025 APEC summit, where he participated in a high-stakes meeting with a variety of different Asian leaders that included China's Xi Jinping. It was right before, just a few days before, she said, President Trump's historic trip to Asia, his 5-day trip, where he did amazing things like signing peace agreements, signing amazing trade agreements with many Asian countries. It was really a good news tour for the president. But they didn't cover it because they said we didn't pay them. And then they began selling off their equipment, which would have allowed them to begin covering it. And this U.S. AGM grantee that Lake says has not always been in alignment with our foreign policy and are guilty of pushing anti-American and pro-CCP coverage. So the grift continues all around the world. No matter where your taxpayer dollars go, The fraud, waste, and abuse is real. Sandasan says, thank you for all you do, Zach. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that generous support, $25 Rumble rant. Let me also say thank you to Sean Joe for a cookie, Boys Blanc for a cookie, and Sulfanol, who says, why not ask Clarence Thomas to come in and answer questions from the Senate about Boasberg's power and decisions? A polite request to Thomas. Well, I don't think that Thomas would be able to answer the questions about the motivations that Boasberg had. All he could really testify about would be what he witnessed externally or what the decisions of the Supreme Court were in overruling things that Boasberg did. Certainly anybody with a comprehension of the law could come in and testify as to what Judge Boasberg did wrong. But what would really be necessary would be Boasberg to testify about his motivations for doing illegal things, for making illegal rulings, or for just simply making rulings that were completely fanciful and not based in any law, precedent, or historical tradition. Now, Jasmine Crockett, somebody on the left who has been campaigning against the president and the administration's efforts to deport criminal illegal aliens, has instead said that she wants to deport U.S. citizens that she believes are white supremacists. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just thought that the hypocrisy was rich. We're trying to deport people who are criminals, who are not allowed to be here legally. Jasmine Crockett wants to deport people she doesn't agree with. This is as fascist as it gets.
But obviously, in Trump's America, this is exactly what he wants. And the idea that one person can get out of line and commit such a horrific crime as shooting two National Guardsmen that never, ever asked to be here. In fact, we know the young lady that lost her life, specifically, we're saying that this is a waste of time. But now you want to go against every single immigrant. That doesn't make sense. And it's frankly not who we are, because if that's the case, let's talk about the white supremacists and how many of them need to be kicked out of this country, because I can guarantee you I can track down more crimes that they've committed, because overall immigrants have a lower crime committal rate than white supremacists. But we don't want to talk about that in this country.
I mean, she's wrong. She's patently, factually wrong. We all know this. Let me say thank you to Bear1007 for the 5 gifted subscriptions. And was there somebody else early in the show who gifted subscriptions that I missed? Hold on, let me scroll back. And if somebody gifted subscriptions that I missed, thank you very much for that. I apologize. But definitely thank you to Bear1007. Appreciate that. All right, now, let's talk about some crimes that may have been committed by people who are recipients of welfare programs here in the United States. Well, we are doing everything we can to stop the fraud, waste, and abuse in the welfare system. And December 1st, today, is the beginning of new SNAP eligibility requirements. So there are now a number of requirements that we've reported on in the past, but it's been quite a while, so I thought it would be worth playing this video where this young woman lines out exactly what is changing in the SNAP program. This is for able-bodied people who have the ability to work and choose not to do so.
Your SNAP eligibility requirements are going to be changing in 2 days. Food stamps, SNAP benefits will be changing in 2 days. December 1st, you need to meet the following qualifications in order to keep your SNAP benefits. And you're going to have to reconfirm your eligibility every month. So you either need to have a job, be in some type of qualified training program, or be involved in some type of qualifying community service. If you are between the ages of 18 and 64 and you do not have a 14-year-old or younger living with you, and you're going to have to qualify, be eligible every month with these requirements. If you are not, your SNAP benefits, your food stamps, will be either cut in half or terminated. This does not apply to anyone who's disabled, takes care of disabled, is maybe having a child. This is for what they're calling able-bodied individuals. So every month you are going to have to certify essentially that your eligibility for food stamps and the SNAP program. So you're not going to just get them for free anymore. And if you don't qualify and confirm every single month with the 80-hour minimum, you will not be getting benefits that month. Did you guys know this? Let me know down in the comments. Does this affect you in any way? Because everyone thought that they got their SNAP benefits back and they were good to go. No, Trump has his foot on the neck of this program, and he is completely overhauling it and revamping it. So you might want to get it together if you're what they're calling an able-bodied individual. Let me know down in the comments. Did you guys know this? Are you ready to be reconfirmed every month to keep your benefits coming in?
Are you ready? Are you ready to have monthly conversations with somebody checking to make sure that you're either volunteering or you're trying to work, you're doing something to be give back to society? I don't think that people are ready for this. I think that there are a lot of people who are going to lose their benefits straight off the rip. And you know what? If you haven't spent the benefits that you have, I think that those should be forfeited as well. Those people walking around with thousands of dollars, oh yeah, they should be drug tested too, 100%, 100%. But I don't think it'll be necessary, because what you're going to have is a whole bunch of people who don't want to work. They don't want to try to work. They don't want to do any sort of volunteer work. They're just going to lose their benefits, and they're going to have to figure something else out. Now, Michigan, as we have talked about in the past, is refusing to provide their voter rolls to Harmeet Dillon and the Civil Rights Division because they were caught violating they were caught allowing non-citizens to vote. Now, Representative Jason Wood, he represents Howell in Michigan's District 50. He was speaking about this at a state house committee meeting, and Harmeet Dillon retweeted the video. And she says, stay tuned. So this goes back to what I've talked about in the past. There is actions taking place in the background to ensure that every single state is in compliance with the wishes of the administration. Not only does that mean that elections have to be safe and secure, but illegals and ghost voters are no longer going to be on the voter rolls. This will happen before the midterm elections here in November. Take a listen.
Real waste, real fraud, and we are going to get to the bottom of it. Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Unemployment Agency. People can simply check a box saying that they are eligible, and in most cases, that is enough to start receiving benefits. There's only 4 pieces of information that are required: a first name, last name, an address, and an alien number, only if that person self-identifies as a non-citizen. No social security number is required, even if someone claims to be a citizen. I brought MDHHS before our committee. We pulled up the website for benefits. We went through all 27 pages, and at the end, we're given the opportunity to register to vote. We've got real weight.
So these people have simply been registered to vote. And of course, as we know, those votes come in very helpfully when it is necessary to call those chips in, and they need to fill in some ballots. Couple of thank yous over here. First of all, Jim Kyle says, have you noticed that when a Democrat has bad character, they get elected? Yes, it is disgusting, and unfortunately, it happens all too often. Also, thank you so much to Micro Toolmaker, who says, where we go, one we go all. Thank you, sir, for the $55 rant, and thank you for the 10 gifted subscriptions to the viewers over there on Rumble. Really do appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much. I hope you had a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving. Now, continuing, let's get into President Trump and his statements about Tim Walz. Now, President Trump called Tim Walz, we talked about it last week, seriously retarded. That was one of the greatest things that I saw over the Thanksgiving holiday. Now, a reporter asked President Trump if he stood by those statements. And, of course, President Trump does stand by those statements. Where's the video? This is the audio only. Okay, hold on. There is a video on X, and that's what I wanted to play. I thought the video was embedded in here. I know it was shared by, here we go.
Many Americans do find an offensive word.
This is so great. He's such a boss.
On top of that, in that same post, you mentioned Tim Walz, and what many Americans do find an offensive word, retarded. Do you stand by that claim of calling Tim Walz retarded?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with him. Absolutely, sure.
You don't think
You have a problem with it? You know what? I think there's something wrong with him. Anybody that would do what he did, anybody that would allow those people into his state and pay billions of dollars out to Somalia. We give billions of dollars to Somalia. It's not even a country because it doesn't function like a country. It's got a name, but it doesn't function like a country. Yeah, there's something wrong with Waltz.
Mr. President.
There's something wrong with Waltz. We all know there's something wrong with Waltz. Now, Tim Waltz's new tactic that he's using is claiming that President Trump is no longer fit for office. This is another part of the Psyop that they are beginning to roll out among Democrat thinkers, Democrat talking heads. He's claiming that he is deeply concerned that President Trump is either mentally or physically unwell, enough so that he shouldn't be president. Now, he was doing an interview with Kristen Welker. He repeated his demand after President Trump called him retarded, saying, release the MRI. Now, let's go ahead and hear from Tim Waltz and his justification for this. Oh, no, we're not going to listen to the whole 10 minutes. I'll just read from the transcript. Part of your initial response to President Trump's post was to call for him to release the results of the MRI. President Trump's already responded. He said, sure, go ahead, release my MRI. It doesn't matter. And I want to give you a chance to give our viewers exactly a sense of what you're suggesting by that, Governor. Well, here we got a guy on Thanksgiving where we spent time with our families. We ate, we played Yahtzee, we cheered for football or whatever. This guy is apparently in a room ranting about everything else. This is not normal behavior. It is not healthy. And presidents throughout time have released a couple of things. They've released their tax returns, not Donald Trump. They released their medical records, not Donald Trump. Lies upon lies. And the MRI is one thing, but I think what's most concerning about this, as your viewers out there listening, has anyone in the history of the world ever have an MRI assigned to them and have no idea what this was for? People get MRIs as a normal checkup for themselves all the time. Okay, you go in, you have a scan, they tell you, okay, everything's cool. Either way, President Trump has said, release the MRI. There's nothing to see here. There is no there. Now, right here, Caroline Leavitt is responding to Tim Waltz and the mainstream media, claiming that President Trump is unfit for office. Now, this is particularly rich, particularly ironic after everything we witnessed during the 4 years of the Biden regime, where people like Tim Waltz and the mainstream media consistently covered up for Joe Biden's failing mental deterioration.
I will point out one fake news story over the weekend before I let you all go from the New York Times that took about 1/3 of the president's daily calendar and his daily schedule and said that he's doing less than he did in his first term, or he might not be fit for the job. That is unequivocally false, and it's deeply unfortunate that this story was written by the same outlet and the same reporter who wrote this. Biden is doing 100% fine after tripping while boarding Air Force One. Oh, same outlet, same reporter who wrote that President Trump is not fit for the job. Are you kidding me? You all see him almost every single day. He is the most accessible president in history. He is taking meetings around the clock. Another one. Biden declared, quote, healthy and vigorous after his first presidential physical. I don't see headlines like that too often about this president. Again, same reporter, same outlet who wrote falsely over the weekend that President Trump is not fit for the job. I can assure you he absolutely is. You all see that with your own eyes on a daily basis, and the president's physician has now given you all 3 detailed reports on the state of the president's health.
President Trump is fitter. He is more mentally acute. He is in a league of his own compared to most of the people out there in the mainstream media. Now, I would like to take you back. I'm so happy that my friend Patriots Are in Control juxtaposed these 2 videos because I wanted to play them right one after the other. First is Tim Waltz meeting at the White House with a series of Democrat governors after Joe Biden had a disastrous performance in his debate with President Trump. He says here that Joe Biden is physically fit. He's doing a great job. And now that President Trump is attacking him for allowing over $1 billion in graft out of his own state, Tim Waltz is claiming that President Trump is unfit for the duties. Take a listen to these 2 opposing viewpoints and just keep in mind everything that we saw. Our eyes deceived us.
Do you think he's fit for office?
Yes, fit for office. President has 3.5 years of delivering for us, going through what we've all been through. None of us are denying. Thursday night was a bad performance. It was a bad hit, if you will, on that. But it doesn't impact what I believe he's delivering.
So look, it's clear the president's fading physically. I think the mental capacity, again, ranting, crazily at midnight on Thanksgiving about everything else. There's reasons for us to be concerned. This is a guy that randomly says the airspace over Venezuela is closed. He's ruminating on if you could win a nuclear war. Look, this is a serious position. It's the most powerful position in the world. And we have someone at midnight throwing around slurs that demonize our children. And at the same time, he's not solving any of the problems. So I'm deeply concerned that he is incapable of doing the job.
The only thing he's deeply concerned about is that he is going to have to answer for the level of fraud, waste, and abuse that has perpetuated not only his entire state, but his administration. Again, the New York Times surprised me over the weekend, writing about Tim Walz overseeing the staggering levels of fraud within his own state. Over $1 billion stolen by Somali immigrants. Now, in that article, they say over the last 5 years, law enforcement officials say fraud took root in pockets of Minnesota's Somali diaspora, as scores of individuals made small fortunes by setting up companies that billed state agencies for millions of dollars worth of social services that were never provided. We've detailed most of them here on this show. Federal prosecutors say that 59 people so far have been convicted in those schemes so far. Over 70 have pled guilty in the Feeding Our Future scam alone. More than $1 billion in taxpayer money has been stolen in 3 plots they are investigating. That is more than Minnesota spends annually on its Department of Corrections. Minnesota's fraud scandal stood out even in the context of rampant theft during the pandemic, when Americans stole tens of billions through unemployment benefits. Not just Americans. They completely leave out illegal aliens, and they leave out foreign gangs that were stealing this money as well. Business loans, other forms of aid, according to federal auditors. Outrage has swelled among Minnesotans, and fraud has turned into a potential political issue in a competitive campaign season. Governor Tim Walz and fellow Democrats are being asked to explain how so much money was stolen on their watch, providing Republicans who hope to take back the governor's office in 2026 with a powerful line of attack, as it should, because this is not something that you can simply hand wave away. Now, in that same interview, Kristen Welker also confronted Tim Walz about this, asking if Minnesota is going to take responsibility for this, or more specifically, if Tim Walz is going to take responsibility for $1 billion in theft. Just a second as I wait for this commercial to end. All right. Thank you also to Misfit Angie, who says, not for public disclosure. That was printed on the top of my QVF inbox list today. First time that's ever appeared. Yeah, the qualified voter file. Isn't that supposed to be public? Obviously, they do not want the administration getting their hands on it.
Dozens of people of East African descent have been charged, convicted, and sentenced for stealing more than $1 billion in taxpayer money from government programs during COVID. As you know, Governor, that is more than Minnesota spends each year to run its Department of Corrections. So I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state.
But it's mostly Somalis. Like 99% of Somalis.
Minnesota's a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals. Those people are going to jail. We're doing everything we can. But to demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy.
It's not really lazy. It's an observation that I think is totally legitimate. Now, an account called the Minnesota Department of Human Service Employees at Minnesota_DHS has been tweeting about the fraud, waste, and abuse that they witnessed and tried to bring to the attention of the Walz administration and also to Kamala Harris. Now, this account was taken down by Twitter today. I had a series of tweets that I was going to show you where they talk about everything that they've identified and that they've been trying to blow the whistle on for quite some time. But of course, Tim Walz, it fell on deaf ears. He wasn't aware of it, or he didn't want to be aware of it. Now, they had been asked, why didn't they tell Kamala Harris when Tim Walz was chosen as her running mate? They said, for public awareness, we did write to Kamala Harris and the DNC multiple times, warning them about Tim Walz and his incompetence, fraud scandals, and retaliation. We tried our best to keep the public informed as our tweets are public. Maybe Kamala Harris turned a blind eye to fraud like her running mate. Over the years, our messages have not changed. We need fraud to stop in Minnesota and good governance to be restored. Now, you can see here, this is a tracker that they created of fraud and waste in Minnesota between 2019 and 2024. And they were able to track half $500 million, 972,320. Obviously, this is not comprehensive because over $1 billion has been identified at this point. Now, I have been loath to refresh this page because it was the only one that I had up. I plan to just go to their account, but let's see if it's gone now. Oh, no, it looks like they have been brought back online. Okay, so Twitter has actually addressed this. Okay, so that's good. Well, they said our original Twitter account was wrongfully closed. So this is back in 2023. As many are aware, we were permanently suspended several hours ago. However, we are back up in no small part to the support of many of you. We are very grateful and moved by your support. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We originally started an X account in October of 22, which we received many threats over. It was finally suspended in March of 23. We started a new X account because we thought we had a worthwhile message. It's actually quite stressful to tweet because we anticipate and expect retaliation. It's the Tim Walz way. In fact, in the last 48 hours, we received numerous threats that left us wondering what we can safely post. We foreshadowed something would happen to our X account, too. That being said, we are so thankful to those who supported us. We're here to try to improve Minnesota. No other agenda. Contrary to popular belief, your support is what keeps us going, and we cannot thank you enough for that. So here on their account, they go through and they have identified many different instances of fraud that has been taking place throughout Minnesota, and they are a worthwhile follow, especially if you're a Minnesota resident. Now, continuing. We have many different instances. Well, actually here, this is from when their account was taken down, but they had posted Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud, but no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and he did this best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of partnership, we got the full weight of retaliation by Walz, certain DFL members, and an indifferent mainstream media. It's scary, isolating, and left us wondering who we can turn to. In addition to retaliating against whistleblowers, Tim Walz disempowered the Office of the Legislative Auditor, allowing agencies to disregard their audit findings and guidance. Media and politicians supporting Tim Walz or the DFL agenda attacked whistleblowers who were trying to raise red flags on fraudulent activities. This is a cascade of systemic failures leading up to Tim Walz. Agency leaders appointed by Tim Walz willfully disregarded rules and laws to keep fraud reports quiet, even to the extent of threatening families of whistleblowers. These same leaders are not qualified for their jobs, instead getting leadership jobs via Tim Walz's friendship, so state government were left floundering. DFL lawmakers refused to acknowledge fraud and deflected any serious conversation to stop fraud. Biased mainstream media such as WCCO and NPR showed absolutely no interest in covering fraud happening in our own state. Programs, especially in behavioral health and disability services, were built without any guardrails against fraud, all in an attempt to extract more funding from the legislature and the federal government. All I can say is I hope that this is coming to an end now. Here we have another case of voter fraud in Minnesota, again in Somalian communities, where targeting registering fake voters for the Democrats. Fraudulent voter registration applications were submitted to election officials and offices in 13 different Minnesota counties. Now, again, this is funded by the taxpayers. These individuals were paid by an unnamed foundation to help register voters. Let's take a listen to the report from WCCO, who is one of those media outlets that previously had no interest in reporting on Minnesota fraud. The only thing is now they can't ignore it.
In with new allegations in a Minnesota voter fraud case that first came to light this summer. 2 people pleaded guilty in federal court to being paid to help register voters. In all, 500 to 600 fraudulent voter registration applications were submitted to election officials in offices in 13 Minnesota counties.
Hi there, Frank. It was some sharp election workers in Carver County who realized the names and addresses on the voter registration forms did not match with any county residents. Prosecutors charged 2 people with 1 count each of voter registration fraud. According to the charging documents, the 2 were paid by an unnamed foundation to help register voters. The 2 defendants pled guilty this summer and have since moved out of state. The scope of the 2-year FBI and state investigation was not previously known.
And it's very significant that they said today it was 13 counties, between 500 and 600 fake voter registrations. And that's just from 2 of the independent contractors that worked with this group.
The investigation involves scouring hundreds of records.
On guidance from the FBI, the voter registration applications were mailed directly to the election lead, and instructions were shared to use gloves when handling the forms.
In testimony before the committee, Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon says the system designed to catch voter fraud worked.
This is a case about individuals who conspired to submit false voter registration applications. This is not a case about fraudulent votes. And this is ultimately a case of the system working.
How many were in the system is challenged.
Republican Committee Chair Kristen Robbins, who is running for governor, says she has additional concerns that the unnamed foundation that paid the 2 workers is funded by state taxpayer dollars.
Why unnamed? Why are they choosing to not name this foundation? Why can't we know the name of the organization that was paying for fraudulent voter registrations?
99% of their budget comes from state grants. So this is a group that the state is funding and that then went out and did these voter registrations.
Now, the hearing left a lot of people, including us, with a lot of questions that were not answered. One of the big ones, the 12 other counties where the fraud was discovered are not being named.
Wow. Anytime they have something like that they want to cover up, it's because they want to minimize the damage and the perceived corruption that is going on. Now, we have yet another case of Medicaid fraud. This time, Kenyan, this is funny. So this time it's a Minnesota man who is receiving taxpayer-funded Medicaid who's actually living in Kenya. Now, because he's living in Kenya, he's not receiving medical services in the state of Minnesota. But he requested his billing records because he heard of all of this fraud that was going on. And it turns out that another fake Somalian company has been billing Medicaid for this man's medical care to the tune of over $200,000. Fake services, $200,000. Once again, a Somalian company, this time for a man living in Kenya. Take a listen.
At another state program designed to help people in need being ransacked by alleged fraud. AJ Legault continues to follow where your tax dollars are going in his multi-year investigation, Recovery Inc.
So there's this company that billed under my insurance named Action Therapy LLC. They're based in Minnesota.
A Minnesota man takes to TikTok in a series of videos.
Y'all just look at the numbers.
And he emails Care 11 Investigates alleging Medicaid fraud.
They're billing. Never been there before. Never even heard of it until recently.
Muhammad Ali said he'd never heard of Action Therapy until he requested his insurance billing records. His Medicaid coverage is through taxpayer-funded Hennepin Health. When he got his records, he discovered in just 9 months, between August of 2024 and May 2025, Action Therapy billed $211,000. It was not all approved, but the records show they were paid nearly $85,000, he says, for doing nothing.
They run up them digits, man.
Muhammad currently lives in Kenya, but still questioned the charges in his name. Abbas Farah with Action Therapy emailed him, blaming the billing on a clerical mix-up and promised a full internal review.
It's like the fox guarding the hen house. I promise we'll look into the fraudulent money that we received by billing your insurance information. Sure, Jan. Hold on.
Sure, Jan.
Back-to-back days.
So, who is Action Therapy? When Carol Evan first started investigating back in June, this was their website.
Take note. Take note of their website. This is similar to what we've seen with these other fake businesses.
Claimed they are psychotherapists. Right away, we found red flags. Action Therapy's website listed their non-working phone number as 012-345-6789.
Wow.
Then their website went dark. In July, a new company website launched. This time, it claims they provide adult rehabilitative mental health services, known by the acronym ARMS, which focuses on real-life skills like budgeting, cooking, personal hygiene, medication management, transportation use, and healthy communication. ARMS is a Medicaid program overseen by the Minnesota Department of Human Services.
The ARMS, or the Adult Rehabilitative Mental Health Services Program.
Just last week, Acting U.S. Attorney Joseph Thompson flagged ARMS as yet another program the feds are investigating for rampant fraud, as he announced federal wire fraud charges in the wake of Carol Evan's investigation into the housing stabilization program.
The level
Remember this
of fraud in these programs is staggering.
We wanted to hear Action Therapy's side of their clients' allegations of fraud, so we emailed asking for an interview and also tried calling Action Therapy's listed number on their new website.
Sorry, that mailbox is invalid.
Well, that got us nowhere. Secretary of State filings confirmed a business address, which brought us to this building in Roseville.
This is going to look familiar.
All right, so we're looking for a place called Action Therapy. But here's the thing, I'm having a sense of deja vu. I've already been to this address and this exact suite number months ago when we were looking at a housing stabilization company called Liberty Plus. Our investigation into housing stabilization fraud found Liberty Plus was a fly-by-night company with a website that listed employees with stock images of people named Caregiver Name.
Caregiver Name.
They used posters like this hung in bus stops and gas station bathrooms to sign up homeless people, promising to find them housing. But clients like Julie Quiros said they were given no help and remained homeless, despite large sums of money billed to Medicaid in their name.
Well, it's not just stealing money. It's taking away from people that already are poor, broke, homeless, have no options, or on their last leg.
Citing Carol Evan's reporting, agents raided Liberty Plus and its owner's home as part of a federal investigation into widespread fraud. Then, just last week, federal charges.
Anwar Ahmed Adaw, the owner of Liberty Plus LLC, is also being charged here.
Now, here we are, going back to the same address and suite, looking for Action Therapy, accused by a client of billing for services not provided.
Suite 400, Action Therapy. Liberty Plus, the housing stabilization place that was raided, is also listed here.
Suite 400 is actually filled with small, individual office spaces, which rent for less than $300 per month. After wandering empty hallways, we spotted a sticker on a door.
It says Action Therapy.
The lights were off, the door was locked. Our questions for Action Therapy, unanswered.
All right, well, let's get out of here. Looks like a dead end again.
Well, eventually, a lawyer for Action Therapy contacted us. She responded to our emailed interview request and said her clients declined to meet for an interview, but she sent a statement saying, in part, they have no ties to Liberty Plus and deny allegations that they have intentionally improperly billed clients.
Of course they did. They didn't do anything on purpose. Didn't do nothing. Now, over the weekend, President Trump also called out Ilhan Omar after, of course, he had mentioned a lot of initiatives that were going to be taken to get rid of people who are subversive and who have entered our country illegally. As you well know, Ilhan Omar likely married her brother in an effort to become a citizen through residency fraud. Or you know what? Or is it green card fraud? I'm not certain, but it was definitely fraud. So President Trump was asked about Ilhan Omar, and he did not hold back. Take a listen. Well, right after we get through this series of commercials, we've got to get by.
Frankly, don't need their people coming into our country telling us what to do.
When you talk about
I'm talking about like Somalia, where you have a congressman goes around telling everybody about our Constitution, and yet she supposedly came into our country by marrying her brother. Well, if that's true, she shouldn't be a congressman, and we should throw her the hell out of our country.
So I really, really hope that somebody in the DOJ looks at this issue. It has been well established. The evidence is undeniable. Take a look at this video from a Facebook Live in 2016. The associate chair of the Somali American Caucus in this video is threatening any Somali immigrant who speaks about Ilhan Omar's marriage. As troubling details mounted against Omar, members of the Somali community were threatened into silence through intimidation tactics and threats of physical violence on themselves and their families, still back in Somalia. Now, this video was recorded August 18th, 2016, and this woman, who is identified as the associate chair of the Somali American Caucus, says in plain terms that any Somali who talks about Omar's personal life, which includes the discrepancies in her marriage, is an enemy of the Somali community. Credible sources in the Somali community have stepped forward and provided Alpha News with information in exchange for anonymity, along with members of the 2003 class who have also identified Elmi's father as Oz Nur Saeed Elmi Mohammed, which is the same man who calls himself father to Ilhan Omar. We're not going to look at the video because it's in Somalian. This is the facts. Ilhan Omar should be stripped of her position in Congress, and she should be deported back to Somalia. Even more than that, we need to get back to a place where we no longer elect subversives to Congress. Now, this is a video describing the McCarran-Walter Act. The McCarran-Walter Act is what we've talked about on the show before. This is what previously banned foreign subversives from being able to hold office here in the United States of America. That included immigrants who moved here and talked smack about the United States of America, or who actively worked to undermine the foundations of our constitutional republic, even communists and Muslims. Take a listen.
You know what needs to happen? We need to reinstate the McCarran-Walter Act. America First means Americans in charge. November 18th, 1990, the 101st Congress quietly repealed the McCarran-Walter Act, forbidding Muslims from holding office. Members of that Congress were Dick Cheney, John McCain, Joe Biden, Al Gore, John Kerry, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi. The McCarran-Walter Act of 1952 was a landmark piece of legislation designed to protect the national security and interests of the United States. It gave our government the power to exclude and deport immigrants deemed subversive or a threat to our way of life. What's funny is for decades, it stood tall, ensuring that those who came to our shores, and especially those who sought to hold power within our government, were loyal to this nation and this nation alone. Its repeal was a grave mistake, and we're living with the consequences today. We see a government riddled with officials who hold dual citizenship, whose primary allegiance is often questionable, and who push policies that benefit foreign nations at the direct expense of the American people. This is not diversity, it's infiltration, okay? It is a slow-motion invasion of our own halls of power, where decisions about our economy, our borders, our wars are made by individuals with deep-seated foreign ties. Our founding fathers, they understood that a nation cannot survive if it's governed by those who owe their allegiance to another flag. We have forgotten that. Lesson to our parole, Reinstating the McCarran-Walter Act would be a powerful first step in reclaiming our sovereignty and putting the American people back in control of their own destiny. It's time to kick foreign influence out of our government and restore America to its rightful place as a nation governed by and for its own citizens. Do you guys agree with everything that I just said? give it a like, give it a share.
Absolutely agree. The problem is that we have foreign subversives and people who hold dual loyalties sitting in Congress right now. That act was repealed by design to allow this situation to happen. It is nigh impossible to get something like this done in Congress now. I hope that it can be done eventually, but unfortunately, given the current set of circumstances, I don't know how it's even possible. Surter says Waltz has shit for brains and diarrhea of the mouth. Absolutely agree. Freya and Boys says when they get here, they don't even know how to use a toilet properly. Rental companies have a budget to give them classes when they move in. No shit. They were rotting bathroom floors. It is absolutely correct. And when you have people from third world nations who move to a first world nation, they don't know how to use modern plumbing. They don't know how to use toilets. And unfortunately, it leads to the situations that we see taking place right now. Now, Kristen Welker also spoke with DHS Secretary Kristi Noem over the weekend, and she was talking about the situation with the nearly 100,000 Afghanis who were allowed into the country. President Trump over the weekend called for the re-examination of every single Afghan citizen that was allowed in under the Biden regime. Let's take a brief listen. Okay,
Bush shutdown hurt American.
Got to wait for this. And based on these statements by President Trump and his suggestion that the only way to fix the United States of America is through the process of remigration, Kristen Welker questioned DHS Secretary Kristi Noem about this very issue. Here is what President Trump said.
I can report tonight that based on the best available information, the Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about. Nobody knew who was coming in. Nobody knew anything about it. His status was extended under legislation signed by President Biden, a disastrous president, the worst in the history of our country. This attack underscores the single greatest national security threat facing our nation. The last administration let in 20 million unknown and unvetted foreigners from all over the world, from places that you don't want to even know about. No country can tolerate such a risk to our very survival. An example is Minnesota, where hundreds of thousands of Somalians are ripping off our country and ripping apart that once great state.
Probably millions at this point, because I believe last year alone, 130,000 new Somali immigrants were allowed into the state of Minnesota.
Billions of dollars are lost, and gangs of Somalians come from a country that doesn't even have a government, no laws, no water, no military, no nothing. As their representatives in our country preach to us about our Constitution and how our country is no good. We're not going to put up with these kind of assaults on law and order by people who shouldn't even be in our country. We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. If they can't love our country, we don't want them. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror. And at the same time, we will not be deterred from the mission these service members were so nobly fulfilling. That is why tonight I can announce that I have directed the Department of War to mobilize an additional 500 troops.
All right. And that was obviously in response to the tragic events that took place on the day before Thanksgiving. Here is Kristi Noem talking about those 100,000 plus Afghan citizens that were allowed without vetting. Every single one of them must be re-examined. And I believe, in my opinion, that the vast majority of them should be sent back to Afghanistan.
That's the irresponsibility that has completely devastated our country, Kristen, put us in such a dangerous position. I don't think people realized when Joe Biden was in the White House exactly how he was allowing our country to be infiltrated with people that we didn't know who they were. Some of them we did know were dangerous, and we went after as soon as they came into this country. But under this program, we could have up to 100,000 people that came in from Afghanistan that may be here to do us harm. And President Trump is absolutely dedicated to getting them out of our country.
Absolutely dedicated and absolutely correct. Now, here she says we are not only going to be deporting people who are known to be issues, but also people who may have pending asylum claims. This is also right in line with what President Trump demanded last week.
Will you deport people with pending asylum claims, Madam Secretary?
We will if they should be. Absolutely. Yes, we are going to go through every single person that has a pending asylum claim, has an asylum claim here in this country. You know, one of the requirements of asylum is that you have to come in every single year for a checkup and an interview process and a re-vetting. And that is something that we're going to expedite and happen immediately with anyone who does have that asylum claim today, and ensure that they deserve to still be in this country, that they still have the purposes for which they claimed that asylum in place, and that they're not here being radicalized and perpetuating dangerous criminal activity against our Americans.
Well, this is particularly notable because a second Afghani was arrested over the weekend because he was on this live stream here, and he claimed that he was going to kill anyone who opposes Afghanis. Let's go ahead and take a look. It is in a foreign language, so I'm going to have to translate what he says on screen. We have a translation at the bottom. He says, how do you commit suicide? I will commit suicide on you. I will commit suicide on anyone who has a problem with the Afghans. There is no problem. Where is your address? Where is it? Where is your address, Port Ward? Where are you going to commit suicide? I'm going to commit suicide here. Are you going to kill the infidels as well? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your infidels, he says. And I'm going to kill anyone who opposes the Afghans. He goes on like this for several minutes. This is why he was arrested for making terroristic threats. Now, he, of course, is now in jail, but you can see in his jail records, he's listed as being a white man in his jail records. Mohammed Dawood Al-Akazi, 27 years old. He was booked into Tarrant County Jail last Tuesday on charges of making this terroristic threat. And according to the Department of Homeland Security, he entered the U.S. as part of the 2021 evacuation orders following the American withdrawal. Now, DHS investigators arrested him after this video surfaced, showing him indicating that he was building a bomb. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement have placed a detainer on him, signaling potential immigration proceedings following his state charges. Now, the arrest occurred just one day before the event in Washington, D.C., but it wasn't reported until after. Shockingly, the Tarrant County Jail lists him as white, despite his Afghan origins. Now, the classification system has sparked a lot of criticism on social media, users arguing it distorts crime statistics while categorizing Middle East or Central Asian individuals in the white demographic. They are not. A post from Libs of TikTok highlighted the inmate details, showing that his mugshot shows his race as white, and questioned what sort of vetting process was in place under the Biden administration. We know there was none. Now, what's interesting is that we can go back. I actually played this clip at the time that Jen Psaki stated it from the White House pulpit, where she said that anyone who was coming into the United States as a result of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan was being vetted.
You've talked about this a little bit, others have as well, but there are, of course, concerns among lawmakers, experts who've tracked this. They're saying previous arrivals of large numbers of refugees from different parts of the world, inevitably there may be a handful, small handful, who are eventually deemed a security risk of some kind. What reassurances can you make about the screening process and the attempts to make sure that somebody like that doesn't make his or her way here.
I can absolutely assure you that no one is coming into the United States of America who has not been through a thorough screening and background check process. And there are many individuals, as you noted, who have not been through that process, and they have gone to lily pad countries as that process has been completed. It doesn't mean that that's because there's a flag. It means they have not completed their paperwork, and we were working to save tens of thousands of people, hence we evacuated them to these third countries.
All right, so that's a fairly definitive statement that every person who would be allowed into the country would have received a vetting process. Well, it turns out that the evacuation, at least at a minimum, led over 5,000 migrants from Afghanistan into the United States of America who were already flagged as national security risks. That includes these two gentlemen that you see on screen who were responsible for acts of terror just last week. This is a newly revealed document. The program was Operation Allies Welcome, and the Department of Homeland Security had flagged them prior to admitting them to the United States for potential derogatory information. There was a total of 6,868 people who we know were allowed into the United States during the chaotic withdrawal of Afghanistan. But according to data provided by the DHS in a letter on September 9th to Senator Chuck Grassley that was obtained by the New York Post, 5,005 Afghans who arrived in the U.S. were previously flagged for national security issues, 956 for public safety concerns, and 876 for fraud. As of September, a staggering 885 of these cases still had unresolved, potentially negative national security information, meaning potential threats remain unaddressed even years later. Overall, the Biden administration resettled over 70,000 Afghans following the pullout of the troops, with reports indicating that at least 55 individuals on terror watch lists had slipped through these cracks. Under the Biden regime, the expedited evacuation prioritized speed over security, and noted in reports from DHS and the Justice Department inspectors general, they were warned that the rushed process created vulnerabilities exploited by bad actors, leading to fragmented vetting and increased threats, which are just now starting to be obvious. This disclosure follows that tragic shooting in D.C. from last week where Ramanala Lakhanawal shot two National Guard members, 20-year-old National Guard soldier Sarah Beckstrom, who lost her life, and 24-year-old Andrew Wolf, who is still recovering. Now, Lakhanawal, of course, has ties to the Central Intelligence Agency, and, of course, he was part of that Unit Zero, a special Afghan kill force that were operating under the auspices of the CIA directly. Now, also, we have here a case that is probably going to warm your heart after everything that we've heard. But an illegal alien mother of several children is now in the process of self-deporting, and she's bringing her kids with her because the father was already sent back. She's actually been in the United States illegally for 3 years, and now she's afraid that ICE is going to raid her home. This is a win for America.
For 3 years, she's been raising her children on her own since January, after her husband was deported. She tells me she wanted to stay in the country longer and have better education for her kids. Goa Santos says ICE agents contacted her over the phone and gave her an option to either be detained.
Look at the shithole she's living in.
Or self-deport. She believes leaving is the best choice for her family.
They don't use cupboards in Mexico?
She says, I don't want my kids to see someone come into the house with a gun or have them or her be handcuffed. Goa Santos plans to make the most of her last few days she has here. She still says she has plenty to be grateful for. She's thankful to God, for her kids and family. I asked her what she'll miss most about being here in the U.S.
Las personas.
The people, she tells me. For 3
We don't care. We don't care. Now, I'm sure she also appreciates the free airline tickets and the, $4,000 she's going to receive for taking the initiative to leave the nation before she gets deported. Good for her. Now, President Trump in the White House posted on the 29th the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 212F. This, of course, is whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens or any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may, by proclamation and for such period as he shall deem necessary, suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he may deem to be appropriate. This is established law, history, and tradition, and I'm certain that groups like the ACLU or CARE or others are probably going to fight President Trump's recent proclamation to end all third world migration into the United States. He could technically end all migration into the United States, and I think he should. I don't think we should be taking any additional people into our country which are not already citizens of the United States, because we have a lot of problems that are only going to be addressed by clearing all of these people out and taking a very careful look at every single person who comes in from this point forward. Now, real briefly, before we move on to the next part of the Psyop, I have a quick message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, let's be clear. Cryptocurrency is no longer emerging. It is here, and this latest move cements the reality of that in the biggest way yet. Trump Media Group just inked a massive $6.4 billion deal with Crypto.com, the world's top crypto platform. They're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion in Crow, the powerhouse token that fuels fast, low-fee DeFi staking rewards and real-world perks like cashback on your spends to launch America's first Crow treasury. When it's done, this new company will be the biggest Crow holder out there, and if you want in on the action, head to Crypto.com today and grab some Crow. Let's make crypto great again. You can use the link or the QR code that you see on screen. All right, now, continuing, Senator Eric Schmidt talks about the restructuring of immigration in light of what just happened last week and President Trump's proclamation. He appeared with Maria Bartiromo on Sunday Morning Futures. Perhaps he's going to touch upon the powers inherent in the presidency as a result.
We turn to reaction from Capitol Hill. We welcome in Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt, a key member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. It is also good to have you, sir. I'm particularly interested in what Congress can do about our immigration policies to help President Trump. He's doing everything that he can. But it was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent who suggested moving to cut off some illegal migrants from tax benefits, from cross-border money transfers, saying that there is no place for them in our financial system. This is part of the incentives that were offered to them to come into this country, part of the reason that it makes it so easy for them to stay here. Is this a good idea?
I do. I think we need to take away every incentive possible that made this wide open border the Biden administration constructed. That's what they.
Every single incentive. I don't care what it is. We need to take it away so that they have no reason to come here. Now, she specifically pointed to U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talking about stopping money transfers. Well, these are called remittances that are sent by illegal aliens who come to the United States to work. These remittances are monies that are produced here by these aliens, oftentimes tax-free, and then they get sent to their home country so that the people that they left behind can live high on the hog, because the American dollar is worth oftentimes a lot more than the money that they're using back at home. So when they transfer it into the local currency, it's a lot of cash. What Scott Bessent is talking about is using the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network to flag all transactions of remittances being sent out of the country that are greater than $2,000 or more, which would find them to be a suspicious remittance. Now, what happens when that money is flagged? Then it is taken by the U.S. Treasury. That money will then be seized by the government of the United States as likely the money that is being sent by illegal aliens to their home country. Now, if it's not money that's being sent by an illegal alien back to their home country, they'll have the opportunity to prove that they are a legal U.S. resident and that they have the legal right to send that money to whomever they want. But in the meantime, I think a lot of those people are probably just not going to want to talk to Treasury or anybody else in the federal government in any way. Now, this alert was sent out as part of the Treasury's effort to prevent the exploitation of the U.S. financial system by illegal aliens in the United States seeking to illicitly move funds. Annually, over the past several years, the United States has witnessed a significant volume of cross-border funds transfers, including remittances from individuals located in the United States, and they've taken multiple steps this year to highlight the risks presented by cross-border financial activity. This alert is consistent with Executive Order 15159, protecting the American people against invasion. Money services businesses are generally required to file a suspicious activity report for a transaction that involves at least $2,000 and that the money services businesses know, suspect, or have reason to suspect is relevant to a possible violation of law or regulation. This is also something that is likely done to transfer monies based on illegal activities that are going to be put together through like cartel activities. President Trump's, excuse me, I need to exit this view right here so that I can read the rest of it. So at Treasury, we will continue to protect the American people by faithfully upholding the laws of the United States. Money services businesses should be vigilant in identifying suspicious financial activity involving illegal aliens who present significant threats to national security and public safety. The announcement comes as we seek to step up our efforts in deporting those residing in the U.S. illegally, of course, just days after this tragic attack that took place in Washington, D.C. The issue of taxing, limiting, or outright banning remittances has long been discussed as a potential option for accelerating the administration's work to secure our country's borders. A huge share of people who enter the U.S. illegally end up working off the books and then they wire their earnings back home. Those remittances are effectively propping up several Latin American economies, which includes Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia, Honduras, and El Salvador. And according to official analysis, monies sent from migrants abroad routinely exceed foreign direct investment, dwarf most development aid, and in some cases rival the nation's major export industries. So this is not a small amount of money, and it would be an option for the United States to be able to collect a lot more revenue. Let me say thank you to Hey Would You Blow Me, who says any congressman, House, or Senate who holds dual citizenship should have their American citizenship revoked and deported to their new motherland. I will agree with that wholeheartedly. G. Fontes says, awfully ironic how many of these foreign nations have flags with light blue as a dominant color. Somalia, Israel, Ukraine, Nicaragua, Haiti, Guatemala, and the worst, the United Nations, in my opinion. Now, we come to another chapter in the psychological operation designed to quell the efforts of the federal government to remove these illegal aliens from borders, from states that are run by Democrat governments, including the government of Oregon. Now, the Attorney General of Oregon and now the governor of Oregon have directly threatened those federal employees who are doing the deed, getting these people arrested and removing them from our country. Let's take a listen to the governor of Oregon. And of course, we're going to have to
talk with you about something that should concern every one of us. I believe, as you do, in the rule of law and keeping our community safe. We also believe in being a welcoming place where our immigrant and refugee communities help our state thrive. The ongoing violent actions of the Federal Department of Homeland Security are unacceptable, going after Oregonians and stoking fear in the name of immigration enforcement, but using excessive force, reckless tactics, and even putting bystanders and local law enforcement in danger. It's not how public safety works, and it's not okay in Oregon. No government agency is above the law. I fully support the AG and local DAs who have put the federal government on notice. Oregon is monitoring all ICE actions closely. We will investigate misconduct, and if a federal officer breaks Oregon law, they will be held accountable, just like anyone else. I will not tolerate reckless or unconstitutional behavior in our state. While ICE activity has seen an uptick in recent weeks, so is the commitment of Oregonians to show up for each other, taking care of their neighbors, and standing up when they see something that isn't right. Thank you for doing that. Let's continue to work together to defend the safety, dignity, and rights of every Oregonian. Thank you.
The comments on this are savage. It seems like the majority of people who are paying attention understand that what Governor Kotek is suggesting is completely illegal. There is, of course, something called the Supremacy Clause. But as I said this morning on Daily with CanCon, what they truly hope to do is to target employees of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol who live in Oregon. These people have nowhere to go. Their houses, their families, their lives are based in the state of Oregon. And so they will threaten those people with state-level charges for doing their job at the federal level. It remains to be seen just how successful Governor Kotek will be with this and his efforts to undermine the federal government. I can only hope that the federal government comes down hard on Mr. Kotek and his attorney general. Now, Mark Kelly this weekend dug himself even deeper into the idea that the military must rebel against President Trump. Take a listen.
You can certainly go to the judge, advocate generals, the lawyers, and have a discussion about it. If you don't have time, you just say simply, I'm not going to do that. That's against the law.
It puts a lot of burden on the troops to make a decision in real time.
It puts a tremendous amount of burden on officers in the military, but that is their responsibility, and they can figure out, a reasonable person can tell something that is legal and something that is illegal.
So would you refuse these specific orders to strike drug boats if you were still in uniform?
Well, the difference between the initial strike and what is being reported, as a second strike, and those things are different. I think this administration has tied themselves in knots, the explanations that we have received on how this is all legal. And I was saying weeks ago, my concern is with the service members, that we're going to put these individuals in a really, really tough decision.
So in the same way Governor Kotek is insinuating that rank and file will be prosecuted for the actions they take as a federal employee, this is exactly what Mark Kelly and the Seditious Six have been indicating with their messaging, that you as an enlisted person don't want to come up on war crimes charges at a later date, because if you do, we're going to prosecute you. And that is what Mark Kelly is insinuating here with this newest Psyop that came out over the weekend. Supposedly, the Secretary of War had directed a strike on a Caribbean drug boat, which left 2 individuals alive, and allegedly he then directed them to send another missile in and kill them. Now, they finally have something that they are pointing to, which is supposedly a war crime. Now, there has been no confirmation that this happened. There's only been mainstream media reporting, the exact same type of circular reporting that we were talking about early on in the show. Now, President Trump posted early today, actually late last night, 12:45 a.m., there are laws that impact our nation. Read Title 18, Chapter 15, Section 2387. Whoever, with the intent to interfere, impair, influence the loyalty, morale, or discipline of the military and naval forces will be fined or imprisoned up to 10 years. He's directly talking about Mark Kelly and the Seditious Six. And he says, Kirk Lippold, U.S. Navy retired. This is right on point. Do what has to be done. He is directly telling his government what actions they should take if we are going to address these psyops that these people are engaging in. Now, here is the story about this alleged strike on a Caribbean boat. War Secretary Pete Hegseth has responded to this fictitious report, claiming that the Department of War, under dubious legal authority, ordered secondary strikes to kill drug traffickers in the Caribbean Sea after they survived an initial strike, and that U.S. forces are killing narco-terrorists without justification. As 2 men clung to a stricken, burning ship targeted by SEAL Team 6, the Joint Special Operations Commander followed the Defense Secretary's order to leave no survivors, the Washington Post reported. According to an anonymous source, Hegseth gave a verbal order to kill everybody in the September 2nd strike against narco-terrorists trafficking narcotics into the United States, which killed 11 designated terrorists. Now, President Trump actually posted footage of this strike on September 2nd and said, please let this serve as notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States. Beware. Now here we are nearly 3 months later, and the Washington Post is suggesting in this article that this SEAL Team 6-led operation is actually murder and is tantamount to a war crime. A Democrat Representative Seth Moulton from Massachusetts described the operation as blatantly illegal. This dovetails real nicely with that video that came out very recently from the Seditious Six, adding, "Mark my words, it may take some time, but Americans will be prosecuted for this, either as a war crime or outright murder." The only reason this is happening is because these 6 Democratic lawmakers recently made very similar insinuations against members of the military, urging them to refuse President Trump's orders by claiming they were likely illegal. Of course, never pointing to any specific orders. Now, because of this Washington Post report, a fake situation that did not take place, they have those illegal orders that they can directly point to. A attempt to sow doubt and to interfere with military operations, which is why President Trump pointed to that specific statute that we have read here on the program before. Alyssa Slotkin, of course, is a former CIA agent who is likely still serving her masters at Langley, and she was the first voice to be heard in that seditious conspiracy, the video that was revealed not long before we had this tragic event take place the day before Thanksgiving. Now, she herself recently admitted that President Trump has not given any illegal orders. The others involved in the video also admitted that there were no illegal orders. But of course, she pointed to the possible war crimes of a Nuremberg-style trial and Adolf Hitler, because who wants to be compared to Adolf Hitler? She even made reference to A Few Good Men. Mark Kelly, a retired Navy captain who would be the one recalled in order to be court-martialed, is facing that Department of War investigation. I hope that he is recalled to active duty, and I hope that he is court-martialed due to his misconduct under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, because this attempt to dissuade the loyalty from the commander-in-chief puts Mark Kelly in a position where violations of federal law, including 18 U.S.C. 2387, which prohibits the actions intended to interfere with the loyalty, morale, or good order and discipline of the armed forces, has in fact taken place. Now, CNN reported on the ongoing situation in Venezuela on Friday, pushing the narrative that illegal strikes are happening, casting further doubt on President Trump's orders amid Democratic lawmakers' seditious calls for armed service members to defy the president. The former Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Beth Sanner, also spoke on CNN. Of course she did. And she described the reporting as really shocking. The reports are shocking. If true, comparing it to Russians killing Ukrainian prisoners and Israel killing civilians in Gaza. She further appeared to justify the lawmakers' calls for military sedition and the question of whether or not members of the military will be prosecuted for protecting our homeland from the violent South American transnational criminal organizations that are seeking to import drugs into our country. Right now, the United States is ramping up its offensive on these narco-terrorists, and there are ongoing conversations with Maduro and the regime. Funnily enough, you would not expect Maduro to be willing to come to the United States to have a conversation with President Trump if he truly was the leader of a narco-terrorist cell, or if he thought he was in any danger of being arrested. If he was a narco-terrorist, if he came to the United States, he would be wrapped up and he would be thrown in prison. It would be case closed. But Maduro and Trump are talking about having talks here in the United States of America, as President Trump has shut down the airspace in Venezuela, and he has directly signaled that we are going to be doing ground operations very soon to destroy these narco production facilities inside the Venezuelan jungle. Pete Hegseth has given this statement. As usual, the fake news is delivering more fabricated, inflammatory, and derogatory reporting to discredit our incredible warriors fighting to protect the homeland. As we've said from the beginning and in every statement, these highly effective strikes are specifically intended to be lethal kinetic strikes. The declared intent is to stop lethal drugs, destroy narco boats, and kill the narco-terrorists who are poisoning the American people. Every trafficker we kill is affiliated with a designated terrorist organization. The Biden administration preferred the kid gloves approach, allowing millions of people, including dangerous cartels and unvetted Afghans, to flood our communities with drugs and violence. The Trump administration has sealed the border and gone on the offensive against narco-terrorists. Biden coddled terrorists. Well, we kill them. Our current operations in the Caribbean are lawful under both U.S. and international law, with all actions in compliance with the law of armed conflict and approved by the best military and civilian lawyers up and down the chain of command. Our warriors in Southcom put their lives on the line every day to protect the homeland from narco-terrorists, and I will always have their back. The administration, Pete Hegseth, President Trump, are in no danger of being brought up on war crimes. However, if these terrorists within our own government are allowed to come back into power, then they may be in danger. For this reason and many others, I truly believe that President Trump, understanding what's at stake, understanding just how tenuous this circumstance is, and understanding how many evil, criminal, seditious actors are currently placed within our own government, we will never allow these people to rise to power or prominence again. All right, you guys, we're going to call it there, and I'm going to see you tonight at 10:30 on Baseless Conspiracies, or maybe I'll see you tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Let me give you a final message from our friends over here on Pilled. Rise Attire wants everyone to remember that you can still grab some Rise and RP78 gear for up to 20% off until midnight tonight. If you use the code BLACK15, you're going to get 15% off store-wide, but you can use the code BLACK20 for 20% off all orders of $100 or more. Love you, friends. God is good. Go to riseattireusa.com/redpill78. Get yourself an ugly Christmas sweater, an ugly Christmas shirt, or get yourself some of the classic dark MAGA gear with President Trump and the laser eyes, or any of the other awesome designs that Rise Attire put together for me here at the show, and then people who would like to wear it. Judy the Lady Pug, thank you for the cookie. Mia Tua, thank you for the can. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Tin Man, thank you for the can. Hey, Zach, have a can, bro. Thank you, sir. Thank you to Sean Joe for 3 cookies, and that will be all. Surter says, hey, Zach, check out Tactical Boys 88. I don't think Lisa is here. I got to go, buddy. Lisa is definitely here. She's waiting for me, but we'll check that out tomorrow. I will go ahead. Oh, you're saying somebody in the chat is talking shit. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll check it out before we leave. I don't see anything from him. I'll have to scroll back through the chat. All right, you guys. Good luck. God bless. I'll see you either tonight at 10:30 on Badlands for Baseless, or I'll see you here tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, good luck. God bless. Peace.